Her thrilling story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She pretended to be a millionaire's missing wife. She just didn't expect him to believe her. But when he kissed her, something inside her awakened, as if that love had lived before. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The March rain fell over Oakmont like a heavy curtain, turning the streets of the historic downtown into dark mirrors, reflecting the lights of colonial mansions. Emily balanced the tray of crystal glasses with the same precision she always balanced the lies she told about herself. 28 years of life, and she still didn't know exactly who she was. The difference was that on that night, it didn't matter. She was just another face in the crowd of waiters serving guests at the Daybreak Foundation's charity auction. The event was taking place at the Blackwood Mansion, a traditional family that had for decades opened the doors of their estate to the elite of the coastal town. Emily knew these types of people. She had served at dozens of similar events over the years, always invisible, always observing. She could recognize by the cut of a suit who had inherited their fortune and who had earned it. She could identify by their gestures who had real power and who just pretended to have it. It was a skill she had developed out of necessity, a form of survival she had learned in the temporary homes of her childhood. But that night would be different. She didn't know it yet when she crossed the main hall, weaving between groups of men in ties and women covered in jewels, offering French champagne with the polite and empty smile she had perfected over the years. She didn't know her life was about to change when she stopped in front of an impressive painting hanging on the west wall of the hall. It was a portrait of a young woman with wavy brown hair and intense green eyes. The face was disturbingly familiar. My God, Sophia? Emily turned abruptly. A middle-aged man wearing an impeccable grey suit was staring at her with an expression of absolute shock. His eyes jumped between Emily's face and the portrait on the wall, as if he were seeing a ghost materialize before him. I'm sorry, sir. I think there's been a mistake. Emily tried to move away, but the man gently held her arm. No, there's no mistake. You are Sophia Blackwood. His voice trembled slightly. My name is Thomas Reynolds. I'm the Blackwood family's attorney. Mrs. Blackwood, where have you been all these years? Emily felt her heart race. She looked again at the portrait and understood the confusion. The resemblance was impressive, almost disturbing. The woman in the painting could be her twin sister or herself in another life, but Emily had never seen that face before, had never heard the name Sophia Blackwood. Sir, you're mistaken. My name is... Please, Thomas interrupted, looking nervously around. We can't talk here. There are people who can't know you're back. Not yet. He took a card from the inside pocket of his jacket. This is my card. I need to speak with you. Urgently. The situation of the family, your families, is very delicate. Emily took the card, feeling the expensive texture of the paper between her fingers. Thomas Reynolds, Corporate Law, an address in downtown Oakmont. She knew that area, where the offices of the most powerful lawyers in the city were located. Mr. Reynolds, I really am not the person you think I am. Thomas smiled, a sad and tired smile. Mrs. Blackwood, I know these have been difficult years. I know you might have had your reasons for disappearing. But Nathan, he never lost hope. And now with next week's charity dinner, it would be the perfect opportunity for your public return. Nathan. The name caused a strange shiver in Emily, as if she already knew it from some deep place in her memory. Who is Nathan? The question seemed to shock Thomas even more. Your husband, ma'am, Nathan Blackwood. He hesitated as if he were revealing something painful. He's different since your disappearance. More reclusive, more somber. The entire family is concerned. Emily looked once more at the portrait. The woman in the painting smiled, but there was something melancholic in her eyes, as if she already knew that a tragic fate awaited her. For an insane moment, Emily imagined herself being that woman, imagined herself living in a mansion, married to a powerful man, being part of a rich and traditional family. It was all so different from her reality that it seemed like an impossible dream. "If you could just attend the dinner," Thomas continued, noticing her hesitation, "just one night. It would be a great relief for Nathan, for the entire family, and naturally you would be compensated for any inconvenience you might have faced during your absence." The word compensated echoed in Emily's mind like a siren. She knew she shouldn't even consider this madness. She knew that impersonating someone else, especially the missing wife of a millionaire, was dangerous beyond any reasonable measure. But she also knew she was tired. Tired of running, tired of lying about who she was, tired of surviving on temporary jobs that barely paid the rent for the room she shared with 2 other girls in the Pine Grove neighborhood. How much? The question left her mouth before she could think better of it. Thomas seemed relieved. $50,000, just for one night. Show up at the dinner, greet some people, let Nathan know you're well. After that, if you want, you can disappear. Again, no questions, no demands. $50,000. It was more money than Emily had seen in her entire life. It was enough to start over, somewhere else, with a new and truly her own identity. It was the freedom she had always dreamed of having. I need to think about it. Of course, and Thomas took another card from his pocket. "This has my personal number. Call me by tomorrow night. The dinner is at the Blackwood Mansion next Saturday. If you decide to accept, I can arrange everything you'll need. Clothes, jewelry, transportation. Everything to make your return." Perfect. Emily put both cards in her purse along with the tips from the night. When she looked up, Thomas had already disappeared among the guests, as if he had never existed. She looked once more at the portrait of Sophia Blackwood, studying every detail of that face that was so similar to her own. There was something hypnotic about that resemblance, something that made her feel as if she were looking at a version of herself that could have been. 3 days later, Emily was standing in front of the gates of the Blackwood Mansion, wearing a black silk dress that cost more than she earned in a year. Thomas had kept his word. He had provided everything: the dress, the discreet but expensive jewelry, the high-heeled shoes that fit her feet perfectly, even professional makeup that further enhanced her resemblance to Sophia. The mansion was exactly as she had imagined it would be. A palatial estate from the early 20th century, built in neoclassical style, surrounded by gardens that seemed to come from a dark fairy tale. Ivy covered part of the stone walls, giving the place a melancholic and mysterious air. The tall windows were illuminated by a warm golden light that contrasted with the coolness of the autumn night. Emily took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. She knew that from that moment on there would be no turning back. She would be Sophia Blackwood for one night, then return to her real life and never think about this again. The door was opened by an elderly man, clearly a butler, who greeted her with a respectful but surprised smile. "Mrs. Sophia, what a joy to have you back." "Thank you, James," Emily responded, hoping she had guessed the name correctly. Thomas had briefed her on the main staff of the house. "Mr. Nathan is waiting for you in the library. Shall I accompany you?" Emily nodded, not trusting her own voice. She followed James through corridors decorated with antique furniture and Persian rugs, passing rooms whose doors were open, revealing luxurious but strangely empty environments. There was something melancholic about the mansion, as if it were a house haunted by sad memories. When they reached a pair of dark wooden double doors, James knocked softly. "Mr. Nathan, Mrs. Sophia has arrived." "Enter." The voice that came from inside the library was deep, filled with an emotion that Emily couldn't identify. James opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The library was impressive. The walls were covered with bookshelves that went from floor to ceiling, and a rolling wooden ladder allowed access to the highest volumes. There were leather armchairs arranged around a fireplace where the fire crackled softly, and there, standing before the fireplace, was Nathan Blackwood. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. He was tall, probably over 6 feet, with broad shoulders under the white dress shirt he wore. His hair was dark brown, slightly wavy and tousled, as if he had run his hands through it many times. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her. They were a deep blue, almost gray, and carried an intensity she had never seen before. There was pain there, but also a kind of thirst, as if he were looking at her like a man lost in the desert looks at an oasis. "Sophia." He said the name like a prayer or a curse. Emily had to make a conscious effort to breathe. There was something about this man that affected her in a completely unexpected way. It wasn't just his obvious beauty, but a kind of dark magnetism that seemed to pull her closer. "Nathan," she managed to say, trying to imitate the affectionate tone a wife would use with her husband after a long absence. He approached slowly, as if afraid she would disappear if he made sudden movements. He stopped just inches away from her, so close that she could smell his masculine cologne mixed with the scent of wood and leather from the library. "You came back." It wasn't a question, but a statement loaded with emotions she couldn't decipher. "I came back," Emily responded, feeling that the words had a weight she didn't understand. Nathan slowly raised his hand and touched her face, passing, his fingers over her cheek, with a delicacy that made her shiver. It was an intimate touch, familiar, as if he knew every inch of her skin. "You're different," he murmured. "Thinner. Your hair is shorter." His eyes traveled across her face as if memorizing every detail. "But your eyes are exactly as I remembered." Emily tried to control the tremor in her voice. It was a difficult few years. "I know." Nathan's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I looked for you. Everywhere. I never stopped looking." There was so much sincere pain in his voice that Emily felt guilty for the lie she was living, but she also felt strangely touched by the dedication he showed to a woman who wasn't even there. "I'm sorry," she said, and realized she truly meant it. "I'm sorry for disappearing like that." Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing her words. When he opened them again, there was a determination there that hadn't existed before. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here now." He held her hands. "You're here with me." His touch sent a wave of heat through Emily's body. There was something deeply disturbing about the way she responded to him, as if her body recognized this man, even though her mind knew she had never seen him before. "The dinner," she said, trying to focus on the reason she was there. "Thomas said there would be a dinner. Forget the dinner." Nathan pulled her closer. "Forget everything. You're here. That's all that matters." He kissed her then, a soft kiss, but loaded with years of longing and repressed desire. Emily knew she should pull away, that she should maintain the facade of a wife returning after a long absence, but she couldn't. Nathan's kiss awakened something in her that she didn't know existed, a hunger she had never felt before. When they separated, both were breathless. Nathan rested his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "I dreamed of this moment every night," he whispered. "Every day, I wondered if you were all right, if you were safe, if you would ever come back to me." Emily felt a pang of guilt that almost made her confess everything right then and there, but then she remembered the $50,000, the freedom that money represented, the chance to finally have control over her own life. "I'm here now," she said, and somehow strangely it felt true. Nathan led her by the hand to one of the leather armchairs. They sat side by side, and he didn't let go of her hands for even a moment, as if afraid she might disappear again. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me where you've been, what you did. I need to know." Emily had prepared a story for this conversation, but looking into Nathan's intense eyes, the elaborate lies disappeared from her mind. "I don't remember much," she said finally. "It was as if I lost my memory, as if I had been sleeping for 3 years and only now woke up." Nathan studied her face carefully. "Amnesia." There was genuine concern in his voice. "Did you get hurt? Did someone hurt you?" The instinctive protection in his voice moved her more than it should have. "I don't know. I don't remember." Emily realized her improvised story was more believable than any elaborate lie she could have invented. "I only remember waking up in a distant city, not knowing who I was or how I had gotten there." Nathan squeezed her hands. "It doesn't matter. None of that matters anymore. You're home now." Home. The word echoed in Emily's mind in a strange way. She had never had a real home, had never truly belonged anywhere. But there, in that library, with Nathan's hands enveloping hers, she felt strangely at peace for the first time in her life. "The dinner," Nathan said after a moment. "Do you feel prepared to see people? Many of our friends will be here. They'll be shocked but happy to see you." Emily nodded, although she felt butterflies in her stomach. It would be her first real test as Sophia Blackwood. "There's something you need to know," Nathan continued, his voice becoming more serious. "There have been rumors during your absence. People said terrible things about me, about us. Some even suggested that I had something to do with your disappearance." Emily looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of guilt or deceit. But all she saw was pain and a vulnerability that deeply touched her. "You don't believe that, do you?" he asked, and for the first time since she had arrived, he seemed insecure. "Of course not," Emily responded without hesitating, and realized she truly didn't believe it. There was something about Nathan that radiated protection, not violence. He smiled then, the first true smile since she had arrived, and Emily felt as if the sun had risen inside the library. "Come," he said, standing up and extending his hand to her. "Let me show you our home. Perhaps it will help with your memories." Emily accepted his hand and followed him. They left the library, and Nathan led her through the mansion, pointing out architectural details, telling stories about antique furniture, showing family portraits that decorated the corridors. There was an intimacy in the way he spoke, as if he were sharing precious memories with someone who had lived them with him. When they reached the second floor, Nathan stopped in front of a pair of double doors. "Our bedroom," he said, but Maid. "Don't move to open the door. I didn't change anything. It's exactly as you left it." Emily felt her heart race. The idea of entering the bedroom that Sophia had shared with Nathan seemed an even deeper invasion of privacy than everything she had done so far. "Maybe later," she said. "I'm still adjusting." Nathan nodded with understanding. "Of course, there's no rush." He led her to a window that overlooked the gardens at the back of the mansion. "Do you remember your garden?" Emily looked through the glass and saw a space that could have been beautiful, but now seemed abandoned. The plants were overgrown, the flowers withered, the paths covered with dry leaves. "I couldn't take care of it after you left," Nathan said softly. "I couldn't bear to be there without you." There was so much melancholy in his voice that Emily wanted to hug him. Instead, she placed her hand on his arm. "We can take care of it together," she said. "When I feel ready." Nathan covered her hand with his, and they stood there looking at the abandoned garden through the window, like two ghosts contemplating the remains of a life that had existed before. The bell in the mansion's tower struck 8 o'clock, a melancholic sound that echoed through the corridors. "The guests will start arriving in an hour," Nathan said. "Would you like to prepare? Martha can help you with anything you need." Emily nodded. The reality of what she was doing returned with full force. In an hour, she would have to convince Sophia's close friends that she was really her. The idea was both terrifying and exciting. Nathan accompanied her to a guest room at the end of the corridor. "I thought you would feel more comfortable here, at least initially," he explained, until things get back to normal between us." Emily was touched by his consideration. It was evident that Nathan was a man who understood boundaries, who respected personal space even amid his own desire. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for taking me back without questions, for being so patient." Nathan came closer and kissed her forehead softly. "I love you, Sophia," he said against her skin. "I always have. That never changed, not for a single day." After he left, Emily sat on the edge of the king-size bed, trying to process everything that had happened. In a few hours, her life had become completely different. She was living in a mansion, being treated as the wife of a millionaire, and, most disturbing of all, she was feeling genuinely attracted to a man who believed she was someone else. She looked at herself in the dressing table mirror and saw Sophia Blackwood looking back. The expensive dress, the professional makeup, the discreet but elegant jewelry, everything contributed to the illusion. But there was something more, something in her own eyes that seemed different. There was a softness there that she had never seen before, a vulnerability that Nathan had awakened in her. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. A middle-aged woman entered, wearing an impeccable uniform. "Mrs. Sophia, I'm Martha. I've come to help you prepare for dinner." "Thank you, Martha." While Martha fixed her hair and touched up her makeup, Emily tried to mentally prepare for what was to come. Thomas had given her a basic summary of the family's closest friends, but she knew it would be impossible to avoid all delicate situations. "Ma'am," Martha said hesitantly, "may I say it's a joy to have you back? The house hasn't been the same without you." "Thank you, Martha. That means a lot to me. Mr. Nathan, he never gave up on you. Even when everyone said you wouldn't return, he always insisted that one day you would come back home." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Nathan's devotion to Sophia was evident in every gesture, every word, and she was there, taking advantage of that devotion for her own benefit. When Martha finished, Emily looked at herself in the mirror one last time. She was perfect for the role. She looked exactly like a sophisticated woman who had spent years away from society and now returned to reclaim her place. She descended the main staircase of the mansion at exactly 9 o'clock. Nathan was waiting for her in the entrance hall, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made Emily's heart leap. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "Ready?" Emily took a deep breath and nodded. She was about to enter a room full of people who knew Sophia better than she ever would. But strangely, with Nathan's arm under hers, she felt brave enough to face any challenge. "Ready," she said, and for the first time in her life, she truly felt that way. The main hall of the Blackwood mansion had been transformed into a scene worthy of a dark fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers projected golden light onto round tables covered with white linen tablecloths, and arrangements of red and white roses perfumed the environment with their intense fragrance. Emily quickly counted about 60 guests, all dressed, with the discreet elegance typical of high American society. She recognized some faces from gossip magazines and television programs, influential politicians, powerful businessmen, socialites who dictated trends. When Nathan led her through the double doors that gave access to the hall, the silence that fell over the environment was almost palpable. All conversations ceased instantly. Silverware froze in mid-air. Glasses remained suspended halfway to lips. Emily felt dozens of pairs of eyes on her, some shocked, others suspicious, many filled with a morbid curiosity that made her shiver. "My friends," Nathan said, his voice carrying a natural authority that commanded immediate attention. "As you know, tonight we celebrate not only our charitable foundation, but also the return of my wife, Sophia." A low murmur ran through the hall, like the purr of a feline about to attack. Emily discreetly squeezed Nathan's arm, seeking courage, in his solid and reassuring presence. An elegant woman of approximately 50 approached them, her dark eyes shining with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Emily immediately recognized her from the photos Thomas had shown. Victoria Hamilton, wife of an agribusiness magnate and one of Sophia's best friends. "Sophia, darling," Victoria said, her voice carefully controlled. "What an unexpected surprise. Where have you been all these years?" Emily took a deep breath, remembering the story she had told Nathan. "Victoria, what a joy to see you," she responded, forcing a warm smile. "It's been very difficult years. I had some health problems. Memory loss, I'm still recovering." Victoria studied her face with the intensity of a detective looking for clues. "Memory loss? How terrible, darling." There was something sharp in her tone, almost predatory. "And you can't remember where you've been or with whom?" "Victoria," Nathan intervened, his voice carrying a subtle tone of warning. "As you can imagine, this is a very delicate subject for us, but Victoria would not be so easily dissuaded. Of course, it must be very traumatic." She moved closer to Emily, so close that she could smell the expensive perfume emanating from her skin. "Do you remember the last time we met, Sophia? It was at the spa in Aspen Grove, remember? You told me something very intimate about your plans for the future." Emily felt her heart race. She had no idea what Sophia might have told her friend, but she knew any wrong answer could unmask the entire act. "I still have some gaps in my memory," she said carefully. "The doctors said some memories might come back with time. Others might never return." Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "How convenient," she murmured, low enough that only Emily could hear. Before Emily could respond, a tall, dark-haired man approached the group. Thomas Menezes, a congressman and distant cousin of Nathan. Emily remembered him from the briefing she had received. "Nathan, my old friend," Thomas said, warmly embracing Nathan before turning to Emily. "And the beautiful Sophia, finally back in our company. I must say you're more radiant than ever." "Thank you, Thomas. It's good to be back." "You know," Thomas continued, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, "I always told Nathan you would come back. I always felt certain that something extraordinary had happened, that you wouldn't have simply left of your own will." There was a subtle implication in his words that made Emily feel uncomfortable. It was evident that many people had speculated about the circumstances of Sophia's disappearance, and some of those speculations probably involved Nathan. "The heart always knows when someone we love is safe," Emily responded, looking at Nathan, with an expression she hoped appeared loving. "Even when the mind can't remember, the heart keeps everything." Nathan smiled at her, and Emily saw something soften in his eyes. It was evident that her words had deeply touched him. The night progressed with Emily carefully navigating through conversations filled with traps. She discovered that Sophia had been a talented painter, information that almost made her stumble when someone asked about her recent work. She also discovered that Sophia and Nathan had married just 2 years before her disappearance, a wedding that had been considered the social event of the decade in Oakmont. During dinner, Emily found herself seated next to a young woman with platinum blonde hair and penetrating blue eyes. Olivia Pierce, daughter of a hotel industry businessman, and according to Thomas, one of the people who most doubted the official version about Sophia's disappearance. "You know, Sophia," Olivia said, delicately cutting a piece of grilled salmon, "I always wondered what really happened that night. The night you disappeared." Emily almost choked on her wine. "Olivia, please," Nathan said from across the table, his voice carrying a tension that wasn't there before. "No, Nathan, let her speak," Emily said, surprising herself with her own courage. "If there are things I need to know, it's better that I know them now." Olivia smiled, clearly pleased to have provoked a reaction. "Well, you had argued with Nathan that afternoon, a terrible argument, according to what was told. The servants heard shouting coming from the library, and then, that night, you simply vanished. Without taking clothes, without taking money, without taking anything." Emily felt all eyes at the table turn to her. The silence was so thick it could be cut with a knife. "I don't remember any argument," she said slowly, looking at Nathan. There was pain in his eyes, but also something that seemed like guilt. "Of course you don't remember," Olivia continued, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "How convenient that, precisely that night, has disappeared from your memory." "Enough," Nathan said, rising abruptly. His voice was low but loaded with an authority that silenced the entire table. "Olivia, I appreciate your concern with my family, but my wife has just returned after years of absence. This should be a night of celebration, not interrogation." Olivia lowered her eyes, but Emily could see the satisfied smile she was trying to hide. It was evident that she had gotten exactly what she wanted, to plant doubts, create tension, insinuate that there were dark secrets in the relationship between Nathan and Sophia. The rest of the dinner passed in relative silence, punctuated only by polite conversations about neutral topics, but Emily could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. She knew there were more questions, more suspicions, more stories that she was completely unaware of. When the guests finally began to say goodbye, Emily felt like an actress who had just left the stage after an especially challenging performance. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, and all she wanted was to retreat to the safety of the room Nathan had prepared for her. But Nathan had other plans. "Come with me," he said, after the last guest departed, extending his hand to her. "There's something I want to show you." Emily hesitated. There was something different about Nathan since the conversation during dinner, an intensity that wasn't there before. But her curiosity was stronger than her caution, and she accepted his hand. He led her through corridors she had not yet explored, climbing a narrow staircase that led to the third floor of the mansion. The walls were decorated with black and white photographs, family portraits that seemed to date back several generations. "This part of the house is older," Nathan explained as they walked. "It was built by my great-grandfather at the beginning of the last century. Sophia always said she felt more connected to the family history up here." They stopped in front of a massive wooden door, decorated with intricate carvings. Nathan took a key from his pocket and inserted it into the lock. "Your studio," he said simply. The door opened to reveal a space that took Emily's breath away. It was a spacious room with tall windows that extended from floor to ceiling, offering a panoramic view of the mansion's gardens and the city of Oakmont beyond. Easels were scattered throughout the environment, some still with started canvases, others empty, awaiting inspiration. There were tubes of paint spread across a long table, brushes of all sizes organized in glass jars, and the characteristic smell of oil paint still permeated the air. But what most caught Emily's attention were the paintings. Dozens of them covered the walls, and all were disturbingly beautiful. Melancholic landscapes, expressive portraits, still lifes that seemed to pulse with their own life. And in many of them, she recognized her own face, or rather, Sophia's face. She painted mostly self-portraits, Nathan said, observing her as she examined the works. She said she was trying to understand who she really was, beneath all the social expectations and masks. Emily stopped in front of a particularly impressive painting. It was a self-portrait of Sophia, but there was something dark about the work. The woman in the canvas looked directly at the observer, but her eyes carried a deep sadness, almost hopelessness, and in the background of the painting, barely visible, was a male figure observing her from the shadows. "When did she paint this?" Emily asked. Nathan came closer, standing so near that she could feel the heat of his body. "A few weeks before disappearing." His voice was tense. "I never understood what it meant, or why she painted herself with such a sad expression." Emily continued studying the painting, feeling a strange shiver run down her spine. There was something in Sophia's expression that seemed familiar, as if she herself had already felt that same hopelessness. "Nathan," she said slowly, "about that argument Olivia mentioned, what really happened that night?" Nathan remained silent for a long moment, and Emily could see the internal struggle taking place in his eyes. "We did argue, yes," he finally admitted, "but it wasn't what people think. I had discovered that Sophia was investigating something about the family, about the past. She asked strange questions, dug through old documents, talked to people who knew my parents." "Investigating what?" "I don't know. She never told me. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she closed up, said I wouldn't understand, that there were things about my own family that I didn't know." Nathan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration that Emily was beginning to recognize. "On the night she disappeared, I tried to confront her once more. I said there couldn't be secrets between us, that we were married and should trust each other." "And what did she say?" "She said she would tell me everything the next day, that she had discovered something important, something that would change everything, but that she needed one more night to be sure." Nathan's eyes filled with pain. "Those were the last words she said to me." Emily felt a genuine pang of compassion for him. It was evident that Nathan carried an enormous guilt about his wife's disappearance, as if somehow his insistence on knowing the truth had been responsible for her departure. "Nathan," she said softly, placing her hand on his arm, "you can't blame yourself for this. Whatever she was investigating, whatever happened to her, it wasn't your fault." He looked at her with an intensity that made her shiver. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know you," The words left her mouth before she could think better. I mean, because I can see who you are. You're a good man. Nathan, a man who protects the people he loves. Nathan moved closer, and Emily could see her own reflection in his blue-grey eyes. And you? He asked, his voice low and husky. Do you remember loving me? The question hit her like a punch to the stomach, because the terrifying truth was that she was beginning to feel something for Nathan, something intense and frightening, that had nothing to do with her act as Sophia. She began, but couldn't finish the sentence. Nathan interpreted her hesitation differently. It's okay, he said, although there was pain in his voice. I understand. After so long, after everything you've been through, feelings need time to return. Nathan, it's not that, Emily said quickly. It's complicated. He smiled sadly. I know, and I won't pressure you. We have all the time in the world to rediscover each other. Emily felt her heart break. Nathan's kindness, his patience, his willingness to slowly rebuild the relationship he believed he had lost. All of this made her lie even more unbearable. They stood there in the middle of Sophia's studio, surrounded by the creative ghosts of a woman Emily never knew but with whom she felt strangely connected. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but loaded with unexpressed possibilities. Can I try? Emily suddenly asked, pointing to a blank canvas on one of the easels. Nathan looked surprised. Paint? Of course. This was always your space. Emily approached the easel, took a brush and dipped it in dark blue paint. She didn't know what she was doing, had no artistic talent whatsoever, but something compelled her to try. Perhaps it was the atmosphere of the studio, or the silent presence of Nathan watching her, or simply the need to do something with her hands to calm her turbulent mind. She began to paint without any plan, letting the paint flow across the canvas. Intuitively, first came blue, then grey, then touches of white. Gradually an image began to emerge. It wasn't figurative but abstract, full of movement and emotion. My God, Nathan whispered behind her. Emily stopped, startled by her own creation. On the canvas was something that looked like an emotional storm, waves of color that crashed and mixed in a chaotic but beautiful dance. It's exactly how she painted, Nathan continued, his voice filled with amazement. That technique, that way of letting the colors flow, it's identical to Sophia's style. Emily let the brush fall, her hands trembling. How was it possible? She had never painted before, had never had any artistic inclination. But somehow, she had created something that seemed genuinely good, something that Nathan recognized as being in the style of his missing wife. I don't understand, she whispered. I've never painted before. I don't remember having painted. Nathan approached and held her trembling hands. Perhaps emotional memory is stronger than conscious memory, he said softly. Perhaps your talent, your artistic essence, is beyond what your mind can remember. It was a logical explanation, but Emily knew there was something more happening, something she couldn't explain or understand. It was as if, in that studio surrounded by Sophia's creations, she had channeled something that didn't belong to her. I'm scared, she admitted, and it was completely true. Nathan enveloped her. In his arms, and for the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, Emily allowed herself to completely relax in his embrace. He smelled of wood and spices, a masculine and comforting aroma that made her feel safe and protected. You don't need to be afraid, he murmured against her hair. I'm here. I'll take care of you, no matter what happens. Emily closed her eyes and lost herself in the sensation of being in Nathan's arms. It was wrong, she knew. She was deceiving a good man, taking advantage of his pain and his hope. But at that moment, surrounded by his warmth and his strength, she couldn't care about right or wrong. She could only feel. When they separated, Nathan looked deeply into her eyes. May I kiss you? He asked, his voice hoarse with contained desire. Emily knew she should say no. She knew that each kiss, each touch, each moment of intimacy only deepened the lie she was living. But when she looked into Nathan's eyes, when she saw the vulnerability and desire there, she couldn't resist. Yes, she whispered. The kiss was different from the first they had shared in the library. That one had been gentle, hesitant, loaded with longing. This was urgent, desperate, filled with a hunger that had been denied for too long. Nathan's hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, while she clung to his shirt, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that was crumbling around her. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Nathan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I dreamed of this for 3 years," he said. "Every night I dreamed you came back to me." Emily felt tears burn her eyes. The pain in Nathan's voice was almost unbearable, and knowing she was being the cause of both his joy and his illusion tore her apart inside. "Nathan," she began, but he placed a finger gently on her lips. "No," he said. "Don't ruin this moment." "With words. Just let me be here with you." They remained embraced in the middle of the studio, surrounded by the paintings of a woman they both knew in completely different ways. For Nathan, Sophia was the beloved wife he had lost and finally recovered. For Emily, she was becoming a ghostly presence that seemed to influence every aspect of her life in that mansion. When they finally descended back to the second floor, it was almost midnight. Nathan accompanied her to the door of the guest room, but made no move to enter. "Good night, Sophia," he said, softly kissing her hand. "Sleep well." "Good night, Nathan." After he left, Emily sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything that had happened that night. The dinner had been a trial by fire, full of dangerous questions and suspicious looks. But somehow, she had survived, had convinced most people that she was really Sophia Blackwood. The problem was that she herself was beginning to believe the lie. She stood up and walked to the window, looking at the dark gardens below. Something had happened in that studio, something she couldn't explain. The way she had painted, as if her hands knew the movements even though her mind didn't know. It was impossible. And there was Nathan. God, there was Nathan. The way he looked at her, how he touched her, how he talked to her, it was as if she really were the woman he loved. And the most terrifying thing of all was that she was beginning to reciprocate his feelings. It wasn't Sophia, but Emily. It was her Emily, who felt butterflies in her stomach when he smiled. It was she who melted when he kissed her. It was she who wanted to be the woman he saw when he looked at her. But that was impossible. She was an imposter, a liar who was deceiving, a good man for money. In a few days, when she felt she had fulfilled her part of the agreement, she would take the $50,000 and disappear, leaving Nathan to deal with a second loss. The idea made her feel physically sick. She lay down on the king-size bed, but sleep didn't come. Her mind incessantly analyzed every conversation, every look, every touch of the night. The suspicions of Olivia and Victoria echoed in her head, the pain in Nathan's eyes when he talked about the argument with Sophia, the mysterious way she had managed to paint in the style of his missing wife, and underneath all this, a question that haunted her. Where was the real Sophia Blackwood? If she had disappeared 3 years ago, what had happened to her? Was she dead? Was she hiding somewhere? And why was there such an impressive resemblance between them? Emily got up from the bed and walked to the dressing table mirror. She studied her own face in the soft moonlight that entered through the window. There was something different about her features, something she hadn't noticed before. It was as if being in the mansion, being surrounded by Sophia's things, being treated like her, had subtly altered her own appearance. Or perhaps it was just her imagination working overtime to process the surreal situation she found herself in. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. For a moment she thought it might be Nathan, but when she opened the door, she found James, the elderly butler. "I apologize for disturbing you so late, Mrs. Sophia," he said, holding a tray with a steaming cup of tea. "I thought perhaps you might be having difficulty sleeping, as used to happen when you were worried." Emily accepted the tray, touched by the old man's consideration. "Thank you, James. That's very kind." "Ma'am?" He hesitated, as if struggling with something he wanted to say. "May I speak freely?" Of course. You seemed different, lighter somehow. Before you left, you carried a weight that all of us could see. There was a sadness in you that we could never understand. But now you seem more at peace." Emily didn't know what to answer. How could she explain to James that she was more at peace because she didn't carry the painful memories that had tormented Sophia? "Perhaps the distance has helped me see things from a different perspective," she said finally. James nodded, although Emily could see he wasn't completely convinced. "Mr. Nathan is very happy," he continued. "It's been 3 years since I've seen him truly smile. The whole house seemed to have lost its soul when you left." After James left, Emily drank the tea and returned to bed. The hot liquid helped her relax, and she finally managed to fall asleep. But her dreams were disturbed and strange. She dreamed she was painting in the studio, but the paints transformed into blood. She dreamed she was walking through the mansion's gardens, but the flowers withered as she passed. And she dreamed of a brown-haired woman who watched her from afar, a woman whose face was identical to hers, but whose eyes carried an infinite sadness. When she woke up the next morning, the sun was coming in through the windows, creating golden patterns on the floor of the room. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories of the previous night returned like an avalanche. The dinner, the suspicions, the studio, the kiss, the strange ability to paint. A knock on the door announced Martha's arrival with breakfast. "Good morning, Mrs. Sophia, Mr. Nathan asked me to inform you that he had to leave early for a business meeting, but will be back for lunch." Emily felt strangely disappointed. She had hoped to see him in the morning, perhaps have breakfast together, continue the conversation from the night before. "Martha," she said while the maid arranged the tray on the small table by the window. "How long have you worked here?" 15 years, ma'am. I started as one of the cleaners when you and Mr. Nathan got married." "And what was I like before I left?" Martha hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "You were a very talented woman, very intelligent, but also very restless, always asking questions, always looking for something we couldn't understand." "What kind of questions?" "About Mr. Nathan's family, mainly. You would spend hours in the library reading old books, examining documents, and you made many phone calls, always speaking quietly, always seeming worried afterward." Emily felt a shiver. It was exactly what Nathan had said the night before, that Sophia had been investigating something about his family. "Do you remember anything specific I was investigating?" Martha shook her head. "You were very private about it, but she hesitated again. There was a folder that you kept locked in your desk, a red folder with documents that you never let anyone see." "And what happened to that folder?" "It disappeared the same night you left. Mr. Nathan turned the house upside down looking for it, but it was never found." After Martha left, Emily ate breakfast thoughtfully, a red folder with secret documents that had disappeared along with Sophia. It was another piece of the puzzle, another mystery she couldn't solve. She decided to explore the mansion while Nathan was away. She wanted to get to know better the place that had supposedly been her home, to better understand the life Sophia had left behind. She went down to the library where she had met Nathan the night before. In daylight, the environment seemed less intimidating, more welcoming. The huge shelves contained thousands of volumes, many of them clearly old and valuable. Emily browsed the shelves, reading the titles, looking for something that might give her clues about what Sophia had been investigating. In the family history section, she found several photo albums and books about the Blackwood genealogy. She sat in one of the leather armchairs and began to leaf through one of the albums, studying photographs of previous generations of Nathan's family. The Blackwoods were clearly an old and powerful family. There were photos of austere patriarchs, elegant women in period dresses, formally dressed children posing in front of the mansion in different decades. Emily recognized some familiar traits in the older faces: the strong bone structure, the penetrating eyes, the aristocratic bearing that Nathan had inherited. But it was when she reached the more recent photographs that something made her stop. There was a photo of the whole family together, apparently taken about 10 years ago. Nathan was there, younger, but already with that magnetic presence that had impressed her. At his side was a young man who looked very much like him, but who had a more carefree smile, happier eyes. Underneath the photo, in an elegant handwriting, was written, "Nathan and Michael Blackwood, summer of 2013. Michael. Nathan had mentioned her younger brother who had died, but hadn't given details. Emily studied the face of the younger brother, looking for clues about what might have happened to him. She continued leafing through the album and found more photos of Michael. He seemed to be the opposite of Nathan in many ways. Where Nathan was serious and introspective, Michael seemed extroverted and impulsive. Where Nathan had that aura of premature responsibility, Michael radiated youth and carefreeness. Emily wondered if Michael's death had something to do with what Sophia was investigating. Perhaps there were secrets about the circumstances of his death that she had discovered, secrets that someone wanted to keep buried. The sound of the library door opening made her look up from the album. Nathan was standing at the entrance, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "I came back early," he said, approaching. "How did you sleep?" "Well," she lied, closing the album, "I was just trying to recover some memories." Nathan sat in the armchair next to hers and noticed the album in her lap. "Family photographs," he said, and there was a tension in his voice that wasn't there before. "You always like to look at these old photos." "Nathan," Emily said carefully, "about your brother, from Michael. I'd like to know what happened to him." The change in Nathan's expression was immediate and dramatic. His face closed, his eyes became distant, and Emily could see the defenses rising around him like walls. "Michael died in a car accident," he said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. 5 years ago. There's not much more to say about it." But Emily could see there was much more to say. The tension in Nathan's body, the way he avoided looking directly at her, the too controlled tone of his voice. Everything indicated that Michael's death was a painful and complicated subject. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It must have been terrible for you." Nathan finally looked at her, and Emily saw a vulnerability in his eyes that made her want to envelop him in her arms. "Michael was reckless," he said finally. "He always was. Drove too fast, drank too much, lived too dangerously. I always knew that one day—" He didn't finish the sentence. "You blame yourself for it." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Emily recognized the guilt in Nathan's eyes because she had seen the same expression when he talked about Sophia's disappearance. "I was the older brother. I should have taken better care of him, should have prevented him from doing such dangerous things. Nathan, you can't hold yourself responsible for the choices of other people, even if they're people you love." He smiled sadly. "It's funny. Sophia used to say exactly that, but then she started asking questions about Michael's death. Questions that had no answers, that only reopened wounds I was trying to heal." Emily felt her heart race. So that's what Sophia had been investigating, the death of Michael Blackwood. What kind of questions? Nathan looked at her with an expression loaded with pain. "You really don't remember, Sophia, the nights you spent awake, digging through Michael's belongings, making calls to people who knew him, trying to reconstruct the last days of his life?" Emily shook her head, feeling terrible for having to lie when Nathan was being so vulnerable with her. "You were convinced there was something strange about the accident," Nathan continued. "You said the circumstances didn't make sense, that Michael wasn't alone in the car that night, that someone was hiding the truth. And you. What did you think? I thought you were suffering as much as I was, and that your way of dealing with the pain was to look for complex explanations for something that was simply a tragedy." Nathan stood up and walked to the window, looking at the gardens outside. "I wanted to accept Michael's death and move on. You wanted to solve mysteries that might not even exist." Emily felt as if she were beginning to understand the dynamic that had destroyed Nathan and Sophia's marriage. He wanted to forget and heal. She wanted to investigate and discover the truth. It was a recipe for conflict. Maybe she was right, Emily said carefully. Maybe there really was something strange about Michael's death. Nathan turned to her abruptly, and for the first time since she had met him, Emily saw anger in his eyes. "Please, don't start again," he said, his voice loaded with frustration. "I can't go through this again, Sophia. I can't watch you consuming yourself with theories and suspicions that only cause pain for all of us." Emily stood up and approached him, touching his arm softly. "Nathan, I'm not trying to cause pain. I just trying to understand what happened to me, why I left, what I was thinking." The anger in Nathan's eyes transformed into something softer, but no less intense. "What you were thinking," he said, pulling her closer, "was that there were dark secrets in my family, that I was hiding something from you, that our marriage was based on lies. And when I tried to convince you otherwise, you only distanced yourself more from me." Emily felt tears burn her eyes. The pain in Nathan's voice was almost unbearable, and knowing that she was perpetuating the same pain by continuing with her lie was breaking her heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for causing so much pain." Nathan held her face between his hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "You're here now," he said. "That's all that matters. We can start over, leave the past behind, build something new together." But, even as he spoke, Emily knew it would be impossible. How could they build something new based on such a fundamental lie? And how could she continue pretending to be Sophia, when each moment she spent with Nathan made her want to just be herself? He kissed her then, a desperate kiss, but filled with hope, and Emily responded, even knowing she was making everything even more complicated. Because the truth was that she was falling in love with Nathan Blackwood, not as Sophia but as Emily, and that was a truth that could destroy everything. The days that followed the charity dinner brought a strange and hypnotic routine for Emily. She woke up every morning in the guest room, had breakfast with Nathan on the veranda overlooking the gardens, and then spent the afternoons exploring different corners of the mansion while he took care of the family business. It was like living in a luxurious dream, but a dream that carried increasingly dense shadows. Nathan was being careful with her, respecting the space he believed she needed to recover her memories, but Emily could feel the constant tension in him, the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking, how his hands trembled slightly when they touched by chance. He was a man trying to contain a desire of 3 years, and the self-control was taking its toll. On Thursday morning, Emily decided to explore the wings of the mansion she had not yet visited. Nathan had left early for a meeting in Oakmont and wouldn't return until late afternoon, which gave her freedom to investigate without raising suspicions. She started with the basement, an area that James had casually mentioned during a conversation about the family's wine cellar. She descended a stone staircase that led to the subterranean dependencies of the mansion, where the air was cooler and loaded with the aroma of old wood and aged wine. The wine cellar was impressive, with hundreds of bottles organized on oak, shelves that extended through several corridors. But it was at the end of the last corridor that Emily found something interesting. A heavy metal door with a modern lock, completely different from the antique style of the rest of the mansion. The ductor was unlocked. Emily hesitated for a moment, knowing she was about to cross a line, but her curiosity was stronger than her caution, and she pushed the door, which opened with a soft creak. What she found on the other side took her breath away. It was a modern office, equipped with state-of-the-art computers, precisely organized files, and walls, covered with whiteboards full of notes, photographs, and lines connecting different points, like a criminal investigation map. Emily approached one of the walls and examined the photographs. There were photos of Michael Blackwood, more recent than those she had seen in the library album. In these he looked thinner, more tense, with eyes that carried a concern that didn't exist in the family photos. There were also photographs of other people she didn't recognize, photocopied documents, newspaper clippings, and in the center of it all, an enlarged photo of the accident site where Michael had died. "My God," Emily murmured, realizing what she was seeing. It was Sophia's investigation office. Everything Nathan had described about his wife's obsession with his brother's death was there, neatly documented and analyzed with the precision of a professional detective. Emily approached a desk where there were piles of documents organized by date. The oldest was from 6 months before Sophia's disappearance, The most recent was from just 3 days before she vanished. She picked up the latest document and began to read. It was a typed letter, unsigned. "Sophia, you need to stop. I already told you that Michael got what he deserved. If you continue poking into matters that don't concern you, you might end up like him. Nathan can't protect you from everything, especially from your own stubbornness. This is my last warning." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Sophia had received threats. Someone had warned her to stop her investigation, and when she didn't stop, something had happened to her. She continued exploring the office and found a red folder hidden behind a pile of books. Her heart raced. Martha had mentioned a red folder that had disappeared along with Sophia. But how could it be here if it had disappeared? She opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were financial documents, business contracts, and several notes in Sophia's handwriting. But it was the last page that made Emily feel dizzy. It was a birth certificate. Her own birth certificate. The name was there, Emily Collins Blackwood. Not Emily Collins, as she had always believed, but Emily Collins Blackwood. And on the line for the father's name was written, Michael Blackwood. Emily had to sit down, feeling her legs go weak. It was impossible. Michael was Nathan's younger brother, and she was 28 years old. If Michael had been her father, that would mean he had a daughter when he was still a teenager. But the dates made sense. Michael had died 5 years ago, at 26 years old. If Emily was 28, that meant he was only 17 when she was born. With trembling hands, she searched for more documents and found a folder with the name Emily written in Sophia's handwriting. Inside were photographs of her since childhood, documents about the temporary homes where she'd lived, even school records. Sophia had tracked her entire life. And then she found a handwritten letter dated 2 weeks before Sophia's disappearance. My dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means something happened to me before I could tell you the truth. You are the daughter of Michael Blackwood, brother of my husband Nathan. Michael had you when he was very young with a woman who died in childbirth. The family decided it would be better to put you up for adoption, away from the scandals and complications that an illegitimate child could bring. But Michael never forgot about you. In the last years of his life, he searched for you, discovered where you were, and was planning to reveal himself as your father and bring you back to the family. I believe someone killed him for this, someone who didn't want you to know your true heritage, your true rights. Michael left a considerable fortune, and as his only descendant, you would be his natural heir. I am investigating who might have an interest in preventing this. I suspect it's someone close to the family, someone with access to the Blackwood business, and I'm afraid they might come after me next. If something happens to me, find Thomas Reynolds. He knows the truth about your identity and has documents that prove your rights. But be careful who you trust. Not everyone in the Blackwood family wants you to know who you really are. You are my only hope of doing justice for Michael. You are the only one who can discover the truth and honor your father's memory. With love and hope, Sophia Blackwood. Emily let the letter fall from her hands, feeling as if the world had collapsed around her. She wasn't an imposter. She wasn't a stranger, pretending to be someone else. She was Emily Collins Blackwood, daughter of Michael Blackwood, Nathan's niece by right of blood. And Sophia had discovered this. She had found Emily and somehow brought her to the mansion, using Thomas Reynolds as an intermediary. The meeting at the charity event hadn't been a coincidence. Emily had been deliberately drawn there. But where was Sophia now? Emily continued searching the office, looking for more clues. In a locked drawer that she managed to open with a hairpin, she found an old cell phone. When she turned it on, she discovered it still had battery, and the last text message sent was to an unidentified number. She's arrived. The plan worked. Now it's your turn to fulfill your part of the agreement. The message had been sent 3 days ago. 3 days ago, exactly when Emily had appeared at the charity event. Emily felt a chill down her spine. Sophia was alive. And she had orchestrated the entire encounter with Thomas, had planned for Emily to be mistaken for her, had prepared everything for her to arrive at the mansion. But why? What did Sophia want her to do? And where was she now? The sound of footsteps upstairs made her quickly turn off the phone and put it in her pocket. She reorganized the documents as they were, closed the red folder, and put it back in its hiding place. She couldn't let anyone know she had discovered that secret office, at least not until she fully understood what was happening. She quickly came up from the basement, trying to appear casual, and found James in the main hall. "Mrs. Sophia, I was looking for you. There's a visitor for you." "A visitor? Miss Olivia Pierce is in the living room. She said she needs to speak with you urgently." Emily felt her stomach tighten. Olivia, the woman who had asked the most uncomfortable questions during dinner, the last person she wanted to see at that moment. "Tell her I'll be there in a few minutes." Emily quickly went up to her room, trying to compose herself. She looked at herself in the mirror and tried to process everything she had discovered. She was Michael Blackwood's daughter. She was the legitimate heir to a fortune. She was Nathan's niece. Nathan. God, Nathan. How could she tell him that she was the niece of the brother he had lost? How would she explain that she had been deceived not by an impostor, but by a relative he didn't even know existed? And more importantly, how could she continue falling in love with him now that she knew they were uncle and niece? She went down to the living room, trying to appear calm. Olivia was sitting elegantly on the leather sofa, sipping tea and studying one of the family portraits on the wall. "Olivia, what a surprise! How can I help you?" Olivia smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "Sophia, darling, I need to talk to you about something very delicate." She patted the sofa beside her. "Please sit down." Emily sat, maintaining a safe distance between them. "You know, I've always been a very observant person," Olivia continued, still smiling that cold smile. "And since Saturday's dinner, something bothers me about you." "Oh, yes?" "You seem different. Not just physically, although you really do seem to have lost weight and changed your haircut. But there's something more fundamental. Your posture, your gestures, even the way you breathe." Emily tried to keep her expression neutral. "As I said, it's been difficult years. People change." "Yes, people change, but there are certain things that remain constant." Olivia leaned forward. "For example, you always had an allergy to roses, remember? You couldn't be near them for more than a few minutes without starting to sneeze and your eyes watering." Emily felt her heart race. She had spent the entire previous afternoon in the garden, surrounded by rose bushes, without any problem. "The allergy might have improved with time," she said weakly. "Maybe. Or maybe you're not really Sophia Blackwood." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Emily tried to maintain her composure, but she could feel the cold sweat on her hands. "Olivia, I don't understand what you're insinuating." "I'm insinuating, darling, that you're a very talented imposter, and I'm here to find out exactly who you are and what you want with Nathan." Before Emily could respond, the door to the living room opened and Nathan entered, looking surprised to see Olivia there. "Olivia, I didn't know you were here." "Nathan, darling, I was just having a fascinating conversation with your wife about changes that time can bring in a person." Nathan looked between the two women, clearly perceiving the tension in the air. "Sophia, are you okay? You look pale." "I'm great," Emily lied. "Olivia was just concerned about my health." Olivia stood up, still smiling that predatory smile. "Well, I must go. But Sophia, darling, I'd love to continue our conversation soon. There are so many things about the past that we can remember together." After she left, Nathan approached Emily, clearly concerned. What did she really want? Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell Nathan everything, to reveal the truth about her identity, about what she had discovered in the basement. But she knew it would be too devastating. He had just recovered the wife he thought he had lost. How could she destroy that by telling him she was actually the daughter of his dead brother? "She thinks I've changed too much, that I don't seem like the same person as before." Nathan held her hands. "You went through a traumatic experience. It's natural that you've changed." He pulled her closer. "But to me, you continue to be the woman I love." Emily felt tears burn her eyes. How could she continue deceiving such a good man? But at the same time, how could she destroy his happiness with the truth? "Nathan," she said softly, "if you discovered that I'm not exactly who you think I am, would you still love me?" He looked at her with surprise. "What do you mean by that?" "Just, what if there were things about me that you didn't know? Things that would completely change how you see me?" Nathan held her face between his hands. "Sophia, it doesn't matter what you might have done during these years you were away. It doesn't matter how you've changed. It doesn't matter what secrets you might be keeping. I love you. I love you, not an idealized image of who you should be." His words were like a stab in Emily's heart. He thought he was talking to Sophia, but somehow, strangely, his words seemed directed right at her, Emily. It was as if he could see through the lie and love the real person beneath the facade. "I love you too," she whispered, and for the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, the words were completely true. Nathan kissed her then, a gentle kiss full of promises, and Emily lost herself in the sensation of being in his arms. For a few minutes, she managed to forget all the complications, all the secrets, all the lies. There were only she and Nathan, and the love that was growing between them. But reality returned when they separated, and she saw the passion in his eyes, the absolute devotion, the blind trust. He was falling more deeply in love with her each day, and every moment of happiness they shared was based on a fundamental lie. "Come," Nathan said, taking her hand, "I want to show you something." He led her to the second floor, but instead of going to the library or to the studio, he stopped in front of a door that Emily had not yet seen opened. "Our bedroom," he said, as he had done a few days before. "I thought perhaps you might feel ready to see it now." Emily hesitated. Entering the bedroom that Sophia had shared with Nathan seemed the deepest possible invasion of privacy. But she also knew that if she continued hesitating, he might begin to suspect. Nathan opened the door and led her inside. The bedroom was spectacular, spacious and elegant, with a king-size bed dominating the center of the environment, tall windows that gave a view of the gardens, and antique furniture that perfectly matched the style of the mansion. But what most impressed Emily was how the bedroom seemed preserved in time, as if it had been kept exactly as Sophia had left it. "I didn't change anything," Nathan said, observing her reaction. "Even after you left, I couldn't bring myself to move your things." Emily walked to the dressing table, where there were perfumes, jewelry, and beauty products organized as if Sophia were going to use them at any moment. There were also photographs, in silver frames, Nathan and Sophia on their wedding day, on trips, in intimate and happy moments. "You seemed so happy," Emily said, picking up one of the photos. "We were. Or at least I thought we were." Nathan approached her. "But in the last months before you left, I felt I was losing you. You had become distant, worried, always lost in thoughts you didn't share with me." Emily studied the photo more carefully. Sophia really did seem happy, but there was something in her eyes, a depth that suggested she carried heavy secrets. "Maybe she was trying to protect you," Emily said carefully. "Maybe she knew something that could hurt you and didn't want to share it with you." "You mean her obsession with Michael's death?" "Maybe it wasn't obsession. Maybe she had really discovered something." Nathan tensed immediately. "Sophia, please, let's not start with this again. Michael died in an accident. It was a tragedy, but it was an accident. But what if it wasn't? What if someone really killed him?" Nathan turned to her abruptly. "Why would you do this? Why, on the first day you finally feel comfortable enough to enter our bedroom, do you bring back exactly the subject that destroyed our marriage?" Emily saw the pain and frustration in his eyes and realized she had gone too far. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to. It wasn't my intention." "Then why did you do it?" Nathan's voice was loaded with an emotion she couldn't identify. "Why, every time we get close, every time things get good between us, do you return to this subject?" Emily didn't know how to respond. How could she explain that she had discovered evidence that Michael really could have been murdered? How could she tell him that she herself was involved in the mystery in a way he couldn't even imagine? I just want to understand what happened to me, why I left, what I was thinking." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, as if trying. to read her thoughts. "You know," he said slowly, "sometimes I look at you and have the feeling you're hiding something from me. Something important." Emily felt her heart stop. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, it's just a feeling. Like there's a part of you I can't reach, no matter how hard I try." It was so close to the truth that Emily felt dizzy. Nathan could sense. She was hiding something even without knowing exactly what. "Nathan," she said, approaching him, "there are things I'm still trying to understand about myself, but that doesn't mean I'm deliberately hiding something from you." It was true, in a way. She really was trying to understand her own identity, her connection to the Blackwood family, what Sophia wanted from her. Nathan studied her face carefully, and Emily could see the exact moment when he decided to trust her. "All right," he said, "but promise me one thing. If you remember something, anything important, you'll tell me. No matter how painful it might be, no matter how it might affect our relationship. No secrets between us." Emily nodded, knowing it was a promise she might not be able to keep. "I promise." Nathan smiled and pulled her closer. "How about we go out for dinner tonight? There's a restaurant in Oakmont that you always loved. It might help with your memories." Emily agreed, grateful for a change of scenery. Perhaps leaving the mansion for a few hours would help her process everything she had discovered. While they were getting ready to go out, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the phone she had found in Sophia's secret office. Who was the person who had received that message? And what did Sophia mean by "your turn to fulfill your part of the agreement"? During dinner at the restaurant, an elegant place with a view of Oakmont Bay, Emily tried to focus on Nathan, on enjoying the romantic night he had planned. But her mind kept returning to the documents she had found, to the truth about her identity, to the fact that she was falling in love with her own uncle. "You're distant," Nathan commented after the waiter brought the wine. "What are you thinking?" "About us," she replied, which was true. "About how strange it is to be here with you after so much time." "Strange how?" "As if we were two different people from who we were before. As if we had to learn to know each other again." Nathan smiled. "Maybe that's it exactly. Maybe we are different people now. I know I changed during the years you were gone. I became more closed off, more suspicious. You were the only person I really trusted. And when you left—" "I'm sorry," Emily said, and she really meant it. She could see the pain that Sophia's departure had caused Nathan, could understand how it had transformed him into a more cautious and lonely man. "You don't need to apologize. What matters is that you're back." He took her hand across the table. "And this time I won't let you leave again." Emily felt a shiver. There was something in the way he said this, an intensity that bordered on obsession. She began to wonder if Nathan's devotion to Sophia was completely healthy, or if there was something darker beneath all that passion. When they returned to the mansion, it was almost midnight. Nathan accompanied her to the door of the guest room, as he always did, but this time he hesitated before saying goodbye. "Sophia," he said, "how much longer do you plan to stay in the guest room?" Emily knew this question would eventually arrive, but she wasn't prepared for it. I still don't feel completely comfortable. I need more time." Nathan nodded, but she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Of course, there's no rush." He kissed her forehead softly. "Good night." After he left, Emily locked herself in her room and took out the phone she had taken from Sophia's office. She needed to discover who had received that last message, who was Sophia's accomplice in the plan that had brought Emily here. She went through the contact list and found only numbers, no names. She decided to call the number that had received the last message, even knowing it was risky. The phone rang several times before someone answered. "Hello?" It was a male voice, adult, that she didn't recognize. Emily hesitated, not knowing what to say. "Sophia," the voice continued. "Is it you?" Yes," Emily responded, trying to imitate the tone she imagined Sophia would use. "Thank God. I was starting to worry. How are things?" "Going there. Is she doing what we arranged?" "She's adapting." "Great. And Nathan? Does he suspect anything?" Emily felt her heart race. So there really was a plan, and Nathan was being deceived by more people than she imagined. "No," she said. "He doesn't suspect anything." "Perfect. Keep it that way. Let her establish herself well in the family, gain everyone's trust. When the right moment comes, she'll discover everything about Michael and will be able to claim the inheritance. That is rightfully hers." Emily hung up the phone abruptly, feeling dizzy. So that was it. Sophia had discovered that Emily was Michael's daughter and had orchestrated the entire situation to bring her back to the family, probably so she could inherit Michael's fortune that had been denied to her. But where was Sophia now? Why had she disappeared again, leaving Emily to navigate this complex situation alone? And more importantly, what would happen when Nathan discovered the truth? Emily put the phone in her drawer of intimate clothing and lay down, but sleep didn't come. Her mind spun incessantly, trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle. She was Michael Blackwood's daughter, Nathan's niece, legitimate heir to a fortune that someone had tried to deny her. Sophia had discovered this and had created an elaborate plan to bring her back to the family. But there were so many unanswered questions. Who had killed Michael? Why did someone want to prevent her from knowing her true identity? Where was Sophia now? And why did she feel this strange connection with a woman she had supposedly never met? The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her sit up in bed. It was too late to be any of the staff, and Nathan always made a point of walking silently, so as not to disturb her. She carefully got up and went to the door, putting her ear against the wood. The footsteps stopped right in front of her room. Slowly she opened the door just a crack and looked outside. The corridor was empty, but on the floor, right in front of her door, there was an envelope. Emily quickly picked up the envelope and locked herself in her room again. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Emily, now you know who you really are, but this is just the beginning. There is much more you need to discover about your family, about Michael, about why someone wanted you to remain away from them. Meet me tomorrow at midnight in the abandoned garden behind the mansion. Come alone. It's time for you to know the whole truth. And Emily, be careful with Nathan. Not everything he says about Michael's death is true." The letter wasn't signed, but Emily knew who had written it. Sophia was alive, she was in the mansion, and she was ready to reveal herself. Emily put the letter away with the phone, knowing her life was about to change again in a dramatic way. The next day, she would finally meet the woman whose face she had borrowed, whose memories she had pretended to have, whose life she had temporarily adopted. And she would discover the whole truth about the Blackwood family, about Michael's death, and about why her own existence had been kept secret for so long. But until then, she would have to spend one more day pretending to be Sophia for Nathan, knowing that each smile, each touch, each affectionate word was based on a lie that was becoming more complex with each hour that passed. And even worse, she would have to deal with the fact that, despite everything, she was genuinely falling in love with him. Not as Sophia, but as Emily. And that was a love that, when the truth came to light, could destroy them both. The next day passed with excruciating slowness. Emily tried to maintain normality, had breakfast with Nathan, feigned interest in the news he shared about the family business, even suggested a walk through the front gardens of the mansion. But each passing minute left her more tense, more anxious for the meeting that would happen at midnight. Nathan seemed to notice her restlessness. "Ah, you sure you're okay?" he asked for the third time during lunch. "You seem distant since last night." "Just still processing everything," Emily responded, which was true. "Sometimes I feel like my mind is trying to recover memories too quickly." Nathan extended his hand across the table and held hers. "Don't pressure yourself. The memories will return when the time is right." His eyes softened. "And even if they never fully come back, it doesn't matter. We're building new memories now." The sincerity in his voice almost made Emily confess everything right then and there. Almost. But she knew she needed to speak with Sophia first, to fully understand what was happening before making any decision about what to tell Nathan. During the afternoon, while Nathan was on phone meetings in his office, Emily decided to explore the gardens at the back of the mansion, the location where she was supposed to meet Sophia a few hours later. She wanted to familiarize herself with the terrain, find possible escape routes in case things went wrong. The back gardens were completely different from those in front. While the main gardens were well maintained and formal, this area was clearly abandoned years ago. What must have once been organized flower beds were now tangles of wild plants, bushes that had grown beyond any control, and stone paths, almost completely covered by ivy and dead leaves. In the center of this wild area, Emily found what must have been a pavilion or gazebo, a circular structure of wrought iron covered by vines that formed a kind of green tunnel. It was the perfect place for a secret meeting, isolated from the main house, hidden from the view of any window, and with several exit routes through the dense vegetation. While exploring the place, Emily couldn't stop thinking about everything she had discovered the day before. She was Michael Blackwood's daughter, Nathan's niece, heir to a fortune that someone had tried to deny her, and somehow Sophia had discovered all this and had orchestrated her return to the family. But the questions that most tormented her were about Nathan. Sophia's letter had warned that not everything he said about Michael's death was true. What did that mean? Was Nathan hiding something about his brother's death? Did he know more than he admitted? The idea that Nathan might be lying to her was almost unbearable. In the days she had spent at the mansion, she had seen only kindness in him, a genuine pain for the loss of his brother and for Sophia's departure. But what if there was another side of him that she didn't know? When she returned to the house, she found Martha in the main hall, looking worried. "Mrs. Sophia, Mr. Nathan was looking for you. He seemed restless when he couldn't find you." "Where is he now?" "In his office, Mum, but he asked to be notified as soon as you returned." Emily went up to Nathan's office, an elegant room on the second floor that she had not yet fully explored. She found him behind a mahogany desk, looking out the window that gave a view of the front gardens. "You were looking for me," she said. From the door, Nathan turned and Emily could see the relief in his eyes. "Where were you? I looked for you all over the house." "Walking in the gardens. I needed fresh air." The back gardens. There was something in the way he asked the question that made Emily feel uncomfortable. "For a few minutes, yes. Why?" Nathan hesitated, as if carefully choosing his words. "That area isn't safe. There are poisonous plants there, holes hidden by the vegetation. I prefer that you don't go there alone." It was a logical explanation, but Emily felt there was something more. There was a tension in Nathan's voice that wasn't there before. "All right," she said. "I didn't know it was dangerous." Nathan stood up and walked to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "I'm sorry if I seemed controlling. It's just that I can't bear the thought of losing you again. If something happened to you—" The vulnerability in his voice was so genuine that Emily felt guilty for suspecting him. Perhaps Sophia's warning was about something else. Perhaps Nathan really didn't know anything beyond what he had shared with her. "Nothing is going to happen to me," she said, placing her hands on his chest. "I'm not going anywhere." Nathan pulled her closer and kissed her, an intense and desperate kiss that spoke of fear and love in equal measure. Emily responded, momentarily losing herself in the sensation of being in his arms, trying not to think about the fact that in a few hours she might discover truths that would change everything between them. Dinner was a silent torture. Nathan tried to keep the conversation light, talking about plans for the weekend, about places they could visit together, about improvements he wanted to make to the mansion. But Emily could barely concentrate, her thoughts constantly returning to the meeting that was approaching. At 10 o'clock, she excused herself, saying she was tired, and went up to her room. Nathan accompanied her to the door, as always, but this time he took longer to say goodbye. "Sophia," he said, holding her hands, "you know you can tell me anything, don't you? If something is bothering you, if you remember something." For a moment, Emily was tempted to tell him everything, about her true identity, about what she had discovered in the secret office, about the letter she had received. But she knew it wasn't the right time. "I know," she said, "and when I'm ready to talk, you'll be the first person to know." Nathan nodded, although she could see he wasn't completely satisfied with the answer. "Sleep well," he said, kissing her forehead. "I love you." "I love you too," Emily responded, and the words were too true, too painful. After he left, Emily locked herself in her room and began to prepare. She dressed in dark, comfortable clothes, put on sneakers that wouldn't make noise on the grass, and put Sophia's phone in her pocket. She didn't know exactly what to expect from the meeting, but she wanted to be prepared for anything. At about 11:45, she carefully opened her bedroom door and peered into the corridor. It was completely dark and silent. She descended the main staircase slowly, stopping at each step to listen for any sound that might indicate someone else was awake. The house was in sepulchral silence. She reached the back door, a service entrance that gave direct access to the abandoned gardens. The door was unlocked, as if someone had already passed through it recently. The night air was cool and heavy with the aroma of wildflowers and damp earth. The moon was almost full, providing enough light for her to navigate the overgrown paths. Without using a flashlight, she arrived at the pavilion exactly at midnight. The place seemed even more mysterious in the darkness, with the vines creating shadowy patterns that danced with the night breeze. "Emily." The voice came from inside. The pavilion soft but clear. Emily approached slowly and saw a figure sitting on one of the stone benches that still remained from the original structure. It was like looking into a mirror. Sophia Blackwood was there, alive, real, and she was really almost identical to Emily. The same features, the same bone structure, even the same height and physical type. The only differences were small. Sophia seemed a bit thinner. Her hair was longer and there was something in her eyes, a depth that spoke of experiences Emily hadn't lived. "You came," Sophia said, standing up. Her voice was soft, but carried a tension that indicated she was as nervous as Emily. You're really alive," Emily managed to say, still shocked by the similarity between them. "I am. And you're more beautiful than I expected." Sophia took a few steps toward her. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for having played my role so well." "Why?" Emily asked, her voice loaded with all the emotions she had been repressing. "Why did you do this to me? Why did you bring me here? Why did you pretend to be dead?" Sophia sighed and sat down again on the bench, gesturing for Emily to join her. "Because I needed time to discover the truth about Michael, and because you needed to know your family. You deserve to know who you really are." Emily sat down, maintaining a careful distance between them. "So it's true? I really am Michael's daughter." "You are." Sophia took a folder from inside the structure of the pavilion, where she had apparently hidden it. "I have all the evidence here. Certificates, medical documents, even some letters that Michael wrote about you but never sent." Emily took the folder with trembling hands and began to examine the documents. It was all there. Hospital records of the birth, adoption documents, even photographs of Michael holding a baby that could only be her. "My mother. She really died in childbirth?" "Yes, she was very young, only 16. Michael was 17. The families decided it would be better to put you up for adoption, away from the scandal that an illegitimate child could cause." "And Michael agreed to this?" Sophia shook her head. "At first, yes, he was just a scared boy, but as he grew older, he began to regret that decision. In the last years of his life, he was desperate to find you, to bring you back to the family. And that's why someone killed him?" The words left Emily's mouth before she could think better of it, but Sophia didn't seem surprised. "You found my secret office." "I found it. I saw the evidence you gathered, the threatening letters." Sophia nodded gravely. "Michael was murdered, Emily. I'm sure of it, and I know who did it." Emily felt her heart race. "Who?" "Someone who had a lot to lose if you returned. To the family. Someone who knew that, as Michael's only daughter, you would inherit a considerable fortune. Someone who was already benefiting from that inheritance being in legal dispute. Who, Sophia?" Sophia looked directly into Emily's eyes. "Victoria Hamilton." "Victoria?" Emily remembered the elegant woman from the dinner, the way she had looked at her with suspicion and barely disguised hostility. But why would she care about Michael's inheritance? Because she was his lover. She had a secret relationship with Michael for years, since before he turned 18. She was convinced he would eventually marry her. that she would officially become part of the Blackwood family. Emily felt nauseous. She's married. A marriage of convenience that never prevented her from having extramarital affairs. Michael was her obsession. When he began to look for you, when it became clear he was planning to bring you back and legitimize you as his heir, Victoria realized her plans were threatened. So she killed him. She had him killed. Victoria would never dirty her own hands, but she has connections with people who would do anything for money. Michael's accident was carefully orchestrated to look like a real accident. Emily processed this information, trying to put the pieces together. And you? How did you discover all this? Sophia smiled sadly. Michael had told me about you a few months before he died. He was desperate to find you, but he was also afraid. He said someone was trying to stop him, that he had received threats. After he died, I began to investigate on my own. And Victoria discovered your investigation. She did. And she began to threaten me, too. When she realized I wouldn't stop, she decided she needed to eliminate me as well. Emily felt a shiver. So, you really were in danger. I was. On the night I disappeared, I had discovered definitive evidence that Victoria was behind Michael's death. I planned to tell Nathan everything the next day, but Victoria got there first. What happened? Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, as if reliving a painful memory. She showed up at the mansion with 2 men. She said I had 2 choices: disappear forever or die like Michael. If I chose to disappear, she would give me enough time to leave the country, but I could never return or try to contact Nathan. And you accepted. I had to accept. I knew if I stayed, she would kill me, but I also knew I would eventually find a way to do justice for Michael and a way to bring you back to where you belong. Emily shook her head, trying to process the complexity of the situation. So the whole plan. Thomas approaching me at the event, bringing me to the mansion. It was my plan. I spent 3 years looking for you, discovering where you were, how I could bring you back without putting you in immediate danger. When I finally found you, I knew the physical resemblance between us would be perfect for my plan. What plan exactly? To bring you to the family as if it were me returning. That way you could establish yourself, gain Nathan's trust, and when the right moment came, we would reveal your true identity. With you officially back in the family, Victoria couldn't simply make you disappear without raising suspicions. Emily stood up abruptly, feeling manipulated and used. So I'm just a piece in your chess game? A way for you to get revenge on Victoria? No. Sophia stood up too, her voice loaded with emotion. You are Michael's daughter. You deserve to know your family, deserve your inheritance, deserve to know where you come from. I just created an opportunity for that to happen. And Nathan? Emily turned to face Sophia. Did you know I would fall in love with him? That he would fall in love with me, thinking I was you? Sophia remained silent for a long moment. I hoped you would get along well. Nathan is a good man. He deserves to be happy. But I'm his niece, Emily exploded. How could you let this happen? Technically, you're not blood related. Michael was Nathan's adoptive brother, not his brother, by blood. The Blackwood family adopted Michael when he was very young, after his biological parents died in an accident. Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. What are you saying? Michael wasn't biologically a Blackwood. He was adopted by the family when he was only 3 years old. So you and Nathan are not blood relatives. There's no legal or moral impediment to your relationship. Emily had to sit down again, feeling her legs go weak. All the guilt she had felt for falling in love with Nathan, all the moral anguish she had experienced, was based on incorrect information. Why didn't you tell me this before? Mostly because I wanted you to fully understand your family history before knowing about the more complex details. Michael may not have been biologically a Blackwood, but he was loved and accepted as a true son. Your inheritance, your rights in the family, all of this is completely legitimate. Emily ran her hands through her hair, trying to organize her thoughts. This is too much madness. This whole plan, all these lies. Nathan will hate me when he discovers the truth. Nathan will. Understand. He's a fair man, Emily. When he knows you're Michael's daughter, that you were kept away from the family unjustly, he'll want to do what's right. And Victoria? What are we going to do about her? Sophia smiled, but there was no joy in the expression. Victoria still thinks I'm dead or gone forever. She doesn't know I've returned, doesn't know you've discovered your true identity. We have the advantage of surprise. What's the plan? Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala at the Hamilton house. Nathan will want to take you, and Victoria will be there on her own territory, confident she has controlled the situation. It will be the perfect moment to expose the truth. How? Sophia took a small electronic device from her pocket. For the last 3 years, I haven't just been hiding. I investigated, gathered evidence, got recordings. I have phone conversations of Victoria with the men she hired to kill Michael. I have bank records showing the payments. I have everything we need to prove her guilt. Emily looked at the device, realizing she was holding the proof that could bring justice for the death of her father, a father she had never known, but who had died trying to find her. And afterward? After we expose Victoria, after the truth comes out, what happens to us? Sophia approached her, and surreally Emily found herself looking at her own face filled with hope. Afterward, you can finally be who you really are. Emily Blackwood, Michael's daughter, legitimate member of the family. And you can have Nathan's love without guilt, without lies, without secrets. And you? I'll leave. I'll restart my life somewhere else. Nathan deserves to be happy, and I've seen how he looks at you. It's not the same love he felt for me anymore. It's something new, something deeper. You've awakened something in him that I never managed to awaken. Emily felt tears burn her eyes. Sophia, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for having taken your place, for having stolen his love. Sophia smiled sadly and touched Emily's face gently. You didn't steal anything. You just showed Nathan that it's possible to love in a different way, more truly. And you showed yourself that you deserve to be loved exactly as you are. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, two women who shared the same face but completely different stories. Emily felt as if she were looking at an alternative version of herself, a version that had lived privileges she never had, but who had also paid a terrible price for it. There's one thing I need to ask, Emily said finally. How were you so sure I would accept this crazy plan? Sophia laughed softly. Because I investigated your life, Emily. I saw how you lived, how you survived, how you always looked for something you couldn't define. I saw that you were brave, intelligent, and that you had a void in your heart that corresponded exactly to the place that belongs to you in this family. And if I had refused, if I hadn't come, then I would have found another way. Because you deserve to know the truth, deserve your inheritance, deserve a family that loves you, and Michael deserves justice. Emily looked at the evidence Sophia had gathered, at the proof of the betrayal and murder that had destroyed so many lives. She felt a determination growing inside her, a thirst for justice she had never felt before. Then let's do this, she said. Let's expose Victoria and bring justice for Michael. There's just one more thing, Sophia said, hesitating. Nathan doesn't know anything about Victoria, nothing about the plan to kill him, but what? He knew about you. Michael had told him about your existence, about his plans to bring you back to the family. Nathan knew he had a lost niece. Somewhere. Emily felt the world spin around her. What are you saying? I'm saying that when Nathan saw you that first night, when he so easily accepted that you were me returning, part of him recognized who you really were. It might not have been conscious, but something in him knew. That's impossible. Is it? Then why did he never question the changes in you? Why did he so easily accept your memory gaps? Why did he fall in love with you so quickly and so intensely? Emily thought about all the times Nathan had said she was different, the times he seemed to be falling in love with a new version of Sophia instead of remembering the old one. You think he knew? I think his heart knew, even if his mind didn't want to admit it. Nathan is a man who has always followed his instincts, and his instincts told him you were important to him in a way that transcended any logical explanation. Emily stood up again, feeling a need to move, to process these revelations through movement. So tomorrow night I'm going to confront Victoria, expose the truth about Michael's death, reveal my true identity, and hope that Nathan forgives me for all the lies. They're not your lies, Emily. They're the circumstances that forced us to lie. And when Nathan understands why we did it, when he knows it was all to protect you and bring justice for Michael, he'll understand. And if he doesn't understand, if he hates me for having deceived him? Sophia approached and held Emily's hands. Then you will survive, as you have always survived. But I don't believe that will happen. I've seen how he looks at you, Emily. It's not just love, it's recognition. It's as if he had been waiting for you his entire life without knowing it. Emily squeezed Sophia's hands, feeling a strange connection with this woman who had orchestrated such a complex lie to bring truth and justice to the world. Thank you, she said, for finding me, for bringing me home, for giving me the chance to know my family. Thank you for being brave enough to accept this madness and for taking such good care of Nathan while I was gone. He seems happier than I've ever seen him. They embraced then, a strange and surreal hug between two identical women who had shared the same life for a few precious days. I'll leave before dawn, Sophia said. We can't risk someone seeing us together, but tomorrow night at the gala I'll be there. When the right moment comes, I'll appear and help you expose the truth. How will I know when it's the right moment? You'll know. And Emily, be brave. You deserve all the happiness this life can offer. Emily watched Sophia disappear into the darkness of the abandoned gardens, a ghostly figure who had changed her life forever. Then she stayed there alone for a few minutes, absorbing everything she had learned. She was Michael Blackwood's daughter. She wasn't blood-related to Nathan. Victoria Hamilton had killed her father, and tomorrow night everything would be revealed. When she returned to the mansion, Nathan was waiting for her in the main hall, wearing a robe over his pajamas, his hair tousled and a worried expression. "Where were you?" he asked, and Emily could hear the relief in his voice when he saw her. "Couldn't sleep. Went out to walk in the gardens." Nathan approached her, studying her face in the soft light of the hall. "You've been crying." It wasn't a question. Emily touched her own face and realized it was wet with tears she hadn't even noticed she was shedding. Just memories coming back, painful things. Nathan enveloped her in his arms, and Emily allowed herself to melt into his embrace, savoring perhaps the last moments of peace they would have before everything changed. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Tomorrow," she said against his chest. "Tomorrow I'll tell you everything." And it was true. Tomorrow night, at the Hamilton Gala, the whole truth would finally be revealed, for better or worse. Emily woke up the next morning with the feeling that she was living the last day of a life that had never really been hers. In a few hours at the Hamilton Gala, the whole truth would be revealed. She would stop being Sophia Blackwood and become Emily Collins Blackwood, Michael's daughter, legitimate heir and hopefully still the woman Nathan loved. But first she would have to spend the entire day pretending normality. Nathan was exceptionally attentive during breakfast, telling her about the preparations for the gala, about the important people who would be present, about how anxious he was to officially present her to society as his wife who had returned. Each word was a stab in Emily's heart, reminding her that in a few hours his happiness would be shattered. "You look worried," Nathan observed, covering her hand with his on the table. "Is it because of the gala? I know it can be frightening, to face so many people after being away for so long." "A little," Emily admitted, which was true. "It's just that it will be the first big social event since I came back. I'm afraid I won't be the person everyone expects me to be." Nathan smiled tenderly. "You'll be perfect. You always are." He leaned over and kissed her forehead softly. "And I'll be by your side the whole time. I won't let you face this alone." The irony of his words was almost unbearable. Nathan thought he was protecting her, but he had no idea that she was about to protect him from the truth about his own brother and a traitor he considered a family friend. During the afternoon, while Nathan was in meetings, Emily spent hours in Sophia's studio, not painting but simply absorbing the atmosphere of the place. She felt strangely connected to that space, as if Sophia's emotions were still impregnated in the walls. She looked at the painting she had created a few days before, those waves of chaotic color that had come from her hands without explanation, and for the first time understood what she had painted. It was the emotional storm that was about to descend upon all of them. At 5 in the afternoon, Martha appeared in the studio to tell her it was time to get ready for the gala. There was a dress waiting for her, a stunning model in navy blue that Nathan had specially ordered for the occasion. When Emily looked at herself in the mirror after being dressed and made up, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a true socialite, a woman who belonged to the world of high American society. But beneath all that elegance, her heart was beating erratically. In her small evening purse pocket was the device Sophia had given her, containing all the evidence against Victoria. In a few hours, she would use it to expose a murderer and reclaim her true identity. Nathan was waiting for her in the main hall when she came down, devastatingly elegant in his tuxedo. When he saw her, his eyes lit up with an admiration that made her heart ache. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, kissing her hand like an old-fashioned gentleman. "There won't be a more beautiful woman in the entire gala." Emily smiled, trying to hide her anxiety. "You look very handsome too." "Ready for our triumphant night?" Nathan asked, offering his arm. "More ready than you imagine," Emily replied, and there was a truth in her words that he couldn't comprehend. The Hamilton mansion was even more impressive than the Blackwoods. Located in one of the most exclusive areas of Oakmont, the property was a modern palace with extensive gardens and a view of the sea. When they arrived, luxury cars already occupied the circular entrance, and Emily could see through the illuminated windows that the party was in full swing. "Do you remember the first time we came here together?" Nathan asked as they walked toward the main entrance. "It was right after our wedding. You were impressed with Victoria's art collection." Emily nodded, although she had no idea what art collection he was talking about. But soon, these small lies wouldn't matter anymore. Victoria greeted them personally at the entrance, stunning in a red dress that cost more than most people earned in a year. But when her eyes met Emily's, she could see a flash of something that looked like suspicion. "Sophia, darling," Victoria said, lightly kissing Emily's cheeks. "What a joy to have you with us again. You look radiant." "Thank you for having us." "Victoria, your house is lovely as always." "And Nathan?" Victoria turned to him, smiling with what seemed to be genuine warmth. "You look like a completely transformed man. Love really does work miracles, doesn't it?" "It does," Nathan responded, squeezing Emily's hand. "Having Sophia back has changed everything for me." Emily caught something in Victoria's tone, an excessive sweetness that sounded false. It was evident that the woman suspected something, but still didn't know exactly what. "Come," Victoria said, gesturing for them to follow her. "There are so many people eager to see you again, Sophia. You've become almost a legend during your absence." The main hall of the Hamilton mansion was filled with at least 200 guests, all dressed with impeccable elegance. Emily recognized many faces from the dinner at the Blackwood mansion, but there were also many new people. Influential politicians, powerful businessmen, local celebrities. She felt as if she were in an aquarium, with all eyes on her, analyzing, speculating, judging. "Breathe," Nathan murmured in her ear. "You're doing perfectly." They circulated through the party for more than an hour, with Nathan introducing Emily to people she supposedly already knew, and her doing the best she could to appear to be slowly recovering her memory. Some conversations were easier than others, but she managed to navigate through most without raising serious suspicions. It was when they were near the bar that Emily saw Olivia Pierce approaching with that same predatory smile she had used during her visit to the Blackwood mansion. "Sophia, darling," Olivia said, accepting a glass of champagne from the bartender. "What an admirable performance you're giving tonight. I almost managed to believe you really are who you claim to be." Emily felt Nathan tense beside her. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying a warning, "let's not start with this again." "But, Nathan," Olivia continued, her eyes fixed on Emily. Don't you find it strange how our dear Sophia remembers some things but not others? How she recognizes people but doesn't remember important conversations we had? How she— Enough, Nathan interrupted, his voice cutting. I don't know what game you're playing, but I won't tolerate you insulting my wife in public. Olivia smiled, but there was venom in her expression. How interesting. Defending her so fiercely. Makes me wonder what you would do if you discovered you're being deceived. Emily felt her heart race. Olivia was getting dangerously close to the truth, and Emily wasn't ready for everything to be exposed yet. Where was Sophia? When would she appear? Olivia, a soft but firm voice, interrupted the conversation. Victoria had approached with an expression that tried to be diplomatic but didn't completely hide her irritation. I believe you're bothering our guests of honor. Just expressing some observations, Olivia responded, but Emily could see she didn't want to directly confront the hostess of the party. Perhaps it would be better to keep your observations for a more appropriate occasion, Victoria said, and although her tone was polite, there was an underlying threat that made Olivia back down. Of course. Excuse me. Olivia moved away, but not before casting one last calculating look at Emily. I apologize for that, Victoria said to Nathan and Emily. Olivia can be difficult when she drinks a bit too much. Thank you for intervening, Nathan responded. I don't understand why she has this fixation on questioning Sophia. Victoria smiled, but Emily caught something cold in her eyes. Some people simply can't accept when others find the happiness they themselves don't have. She turned to Emily. But you mustn't let yourself be affected by this, darling. You're back in your place with the man you love. It's all that matters. There was something in the way Victoria said these words that made Emily feel uncomfortable. It was as if she were being tested, as if Victoria were looking for a specific reaction. You're right, Emily responded carefully. It's all that matters. Victoria studied her for another moment, then smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Good. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of the party. Dinner will be served soon. When Victoria moved away, Nathan held Emily's arm. Are you okay? You seem tense. Emily was about to respond when she saw a familiar figure across the room. Thomas Reynolds, the lawyer who had started this whole situation, was discreetly conversing with a man she didn't recognize. When Thomas saw her, he subtly nodded and then gestured almost imperceptibly toward the French doors that led to the terrace. Nathan, Emily said, I need some fresh air. Can we go out on the terrace for a few minutes? Of course, you really do look like you need to breathe a bit. They walked to the terrace, an elegant area with a view of the illuminated gardens and Oakmont Bay in the distance. There were a few people scattered around the space, talking in small groups, but it was considerably quieter than the main hall. Thomas approached them a few minutes later, feigning casualness. Nathan, good to see you. Mrs. Sophia, he nodded. To Emily. I hope you're enjoying the party. We are, Thomas, Nathan responded. And you? How's business? Very well, thank you. By the way, Nathan, there's a matter I'd like to discuss with you soon. Something related to Michael's documents that I mentioned a few months ago. Emily saw Nathan stiffen. What documents? Well, Thomas hesitated, looking quickly at Emily. Perhaps this isn't the best moment to discuss this. It's a delicate matter. Thomas, Nathan said, his voice loaded with an authority that Emily rarely had heard. What documents of Michael's? Thomas took a deep breath, clearly uncomfortable. Documents related to a daughter he had when he was very young, a daughter who was given up for adoption, but whom he was trying to locate before the accident. Emily felt the world stop around her. This wasn't how things were supposed to be revealed. Sophia was supposed to appear. They were supposed to have control over how and when the truth would be told. Nathan looked between Thomas and Emily, his expression slowly changing from confusion to something that seemed like suspicion. A daughter? Michael never told me about any daughter. He was planning to tell you after he found her, Thomas continued. But, well, you know what happened. Emily could see the wheels turning in Nathan's mind, could see the exact moment when he began to put the pieces together. Thomas, Nathan said slowly, Why are you telling me this now? And why are you looking at Sophia that way? Before Thomas could respond, a familiar voice echoed across the terrace. "Because I asked him to tell you, Nathan." Everyone turned. Sophia was standing at the entrance to the terrace, exactly as Emily had seen her the night before, identical to Emily in almost every aspect. The silence that fell over the terrace was absolute. Nathan looked between Emily and Sophia, his face progressively paling as the reality of the situation became clear. What's happening here?" he whispered. Sophia approached slowly, her eyes fixed on Nathan. "Nathan, there's much you need to know about Michael, about me, about Emily." "Emily?" Nathan turned to the woman he knew as Sophia. "Who is Emily?" Emily felt tears burn her eyes. This wasn't the moment she had planned. This wasn't how she wanted him to find out. "I am Emily," she said, her voice barely passing a whisper. "I am Emily Collins Blackwood, Michael's daughter." Nathan staggered slightly, as if he had taken a physical blow. "This isn't possible. You're Sophia, you're my wife." "No, Nathan," Sophia moved closer. "She's Emily, Michael's daughter, your niece, and I'm Sophia, your wife who pretended to be dead for the last 3 years. Nathan leaned against the terrace balustrade, clearly trying to process information that defied everything he thought he knew about his reality. You're telling me that I fell in love with my brother's daughter, that you deceived me during all these days?" "Nathan, please, let us explain," Emily approached him, but Nathan backed away. "Don't touch me," he said, his voice loaded with a pain that broke Emily's heart. "Don't come near me." Sophia took a step forward. "Nathan, I know it's a lot to process, but there's more, much more. Michael didn't die in an accident. He was murdered." Nathan looked at her as if she had completely lost her mind. "Murdered? Why? By whom?" "By Victoria Hamilton." The voice came from behind them. Everyone turned to see Victoria standing at the entrance to the terrace, still in her elegant red dress, but with an expression on her face that Emily had never seen before. It was cold, calculating, completely devoid of the false cordiality she had always shown. "What an interesting accusation," Victoria said, walking slowly toward the group. "And completely false, of course." "We have proof," Sophia said, taking the electronic device from her pocket. "Recordings of you hiring the men who killed Michael. Bank records of the payments. Everything documented." Victoria smiled, but there was no humor in the expression. "Oh, my dear Sophia, always so dramatic." She turned to Nathan. "Are you really going to believe these 2 lying women? 2 women who spent God knows how long deceiving you in the cruelest possible way?" Nathan didn't respond, still clearly too shocked to fully process what was happening. "Nathan," Emily tried again, "I know you're confused, I know you feel betrayed, but please, listen to the truth about Michael." "The truth?" Nathan finally exploded. "You want to talk about truth? You let me fall in love with you knowing it was a lie. You let me believe my wife had returned, let me feel hope again, let me—" His voice broke, and Emily saw tears in his eyes. "Let me love you," he finished in a whisper. "And you do love," Emily said, approaching him despite his backing away. "Nathan, you do love, and I love you too. That's not a lie. The feelings between us, they are real." "How can they be real?" Nathan shouted. "Everything was based on lies. I don't even know who you really are." "You do know," Emily said, tears now streaming down her face. "You know my heart. You know my soul. You know the woman who fell in love with you, not despite the circumstances, but because of who you are. The name I use doesn't change that." "Oh, what a touching scene," Victoria interrupted, her voice loaded with sarcasm. "But I'm afraid this little family reunion is about to have a very different ending than you planned." Emily saw that Victoria had taken a small revolver from her purse, keeping it low but clearly visible to the group. "Victoria," Nathan said, clearly shocked. "What are you doing?" "Protecting my interests," she responded calmly. "And protecting you, dear Nathan, from these 2 manipulators." "You really killed Michael?" Nathan asked, his voice barely believing his own words. Victoria smiled sadly. Michael was an impulsive boy who was about to do something very stupid, bringing back a bastard daughter, legitimizing her, giving her a fortune she didn't deserve. He was obsessed with this girl. She looked at Emily with disdain, who didn't even remember him. "So you killed him," Emily said, feeling a rage growing inside her that she had never experienced before. "I saved him from himself, and saved the Blackwood family from an unnecessary scandal." Nathan staggered again. "Victoria, you were my friend, family friend. How could you do this?" "Because I loved Michael more than anyone else in this world," Victoria said, and for the first time her voice carried genuine emotion. "I loved him since he was a teenager. I planned my entire life around the idea that one day we would be together, and then he decided he wanted to waste everything on a daughter he barely knew." "He was my father," Emily said, her voice trembling with anger. "He had the right to know me, had the right to bring me back to the family." "You have no rights here," Victoria replied. "You're a bastard, daughter of some teenage girl who couldn't even survive childbirth. You don't belong to the Blackwood family." "She belongs more than you," Sophia spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Michael may have been adopted, but he was loved and accepted as a true Blackwood. Emily is blood of his blood. And you," Victoria turned to Sophia, "you should have remained dead as we agreed." "I never agreed to stay dead. I agreed to disappear to protect myself, but I always knew that one day I would return to bring justice for Michael." Victoria laughed, a cold and bitter sound. "Justice? The only justice here would be for you two to permanently disappear, leaving Nathan in peace to get on with his life." Emily saw that the situation was rapidly spinning out of control. Victoria was clearly desperate, and desperate people with guns were unpredictable. "Victoria," she said, trying to keep her voice calm, "you don't need to do this. We can resolve this in a civilized way." "Oh, yes? And how exactly? You go to the police with your supposed evidence, try to incriminate me for what was clearly a tragic accident, destroy my reputation, my life, because of your paranoid fantasies." "They're not fantasies," Sophia said, holding up the electronic device. "We have recordings of you, Victoria, your own voice hiring the killers." "What a shame," Victoria said, "because you'll never have the chance to use those recordings." That was when Thomas acted. The lawyer, who had remained silent during the entire confrontation, moved quickly behind Victoria, trying to disarm her. There was a brief struggle, shouts, and then the sound of a gunshot echoed across the terrace. For a terrible moment, Emily thought Thomas had been hit. But it was Victoria who fell, holding her shoulder, the revolver skidding far from her on the marble floor. "Call an ambulance," Thomas shouted, "and the police." Nathan, who had remained paralyzed during the entire confrontation, finally reacted, running to help Thomas contain Victoria. Emily found herself running towards Sophia, who had fallen during the confusion. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am," Sophia replied, accepting Emily's help to stand up. "It's all over now." But when Emily looked at Nathan, who was tending to the wounded Victoria while they waited for the ambulance to arrive, she wasn't sure that anything was over. The truth had been revealed. Michael's murderer had been exposed, but the man she loved now looked at her as if she were a complete stranger. And perhaps, Emily thought with a broken heart, that was exactly what she was to him now. A stranger who had stolen his wife's face and won his heart through lies, even if those lies had been told with the best intentions. The police arrived 15 minutes later, followed by the ambulance. Victoria was taken to the hospital under police custody, still protesting her innocence, even in the face of the evidence that Sophia handed over to the investigators. Emily, Sophia, and Nathan were taken to the police station to give statements. Thomas, too, as the main witness of the night's events. It was a long and exhausting night, full of questions, forms, and the constant repetition of a story that sounded more surreal each time it was told. When they were finally released, dawn was breaking. Nathan hadn't spoken directly to Emily during the entire process, answering only when questioned by the police, and maintaining a physical and emotional distance that hurt more than any physical wound could have. Outside the police station, the three stood on the sidewalk, none knowing exactly what to say. "Nathan," Emily began, but he raised his hand to silence her. "No," he said, his voice tired and loaded with pain. "Not now. I need time to process all of this." "Please," Emily tried again. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" Nathan turned to her, and Emily could see the devastation in his eyes. "Explain how you two orchestrated this elaborate farce. Explain how you let me fall in love with you knowing you were lying about who you were. Explain how Sophia," he looked at his real wife, "pretended to be dead for 3 years. We did what we thought was necessary to protect Emily and expose the truth about Michael," Sophia said calmly. "And didn't think to include me in that decision? Didn't think I had the right to know my brother had been murdered? That I had a niece you brought into my house under false pretenses?" Emily felt tears burn her eyes again. "Nathan, please try to understand. I didn't want to deceive you. When I arrived at your house, I didn't know who I really was. I discovered the truth at the same time I was falling in love with you." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, and Emily could see the battle taking place in his eyes, love against betrayal, desire against mistrust. "You say you fell in love with me," he said finally, "but how can I know what's real and what's part of the performance?" "Because you felt it," Emily said desperately. "You felt the difference between the woman I am and the woman Sophia was. You yourself said I was different, that there was something new about me that you had never seen before." "Maybe," Nathan admitted, "but that doesn't change the fact that everything was based on a lie." Sophia took a step forward. "Nathan, I know you're hurt. I know you feel betrayed, but Emily didn't do any of this out of malice. She was brought into this situation as much as you were. And the feelings between you, I've seen how you look at each other. It's real. It's more real than anything you and I ever had." Nathan looked at his true wife, studying the face he had thought lost forever. "And you, Sophia, what do you want now? Now that the truth has been revealed? Now that Victoria has been exposed?" Sophia smiled sadly. "I want you to be happy, Nathan, and you won't be happy with me. We both know that. Our marriage was already ending before I disappeared. The investigations about Michael, the secrets, the distance that grew between us, we were already living like strangers. But you are my wife. On paper, yes, but in heart. Your heart belongs to Emily now, and mine needs to learn to move on." Emily looked between Nathan and Sophia, feeling as if she were watching the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Nathan took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair in a way that Emily had learned to recognize as his stress gesture. "Now," he said, "I need time. Time to process all of this, to understand what's real and what isn't, to decide how I feel about everything." "How much time?" Emily asked, knowing she probably shouldn't, but needing to know. Nathan looked at her, and for a moment she saw the love that had been growing between them shine in his eyes. But then the defenses returned, and he pulled away. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe a long time. Maybe forever." And with that, he turned and walked toward the taxi that had stopped at the corner, leaving Emily and Sophia alone on the sidewalk, watching the man they both loved, each in her own way, disappear. In the faint morning light, Emily felt as if her heart had been torn from her chest. She had found her family, discovered her true identity, brought justice for her father's death, but in the process had lost the only thing that really mattered, the love of the man for whom she was willing to sacrifice everything. Sophia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He'll come back," she said softly. "When the shock passes, when he processes everything, he'll remember what you have together." "And if he doesn't come back?" Emily asked, her voice broken with emotion. "Then you'll survive," Sophia replied, "as you've always survived. But I don't. Believe it will come to that. Nathan is a good man, a fair man. And when he fully understands what we did and why, when he remembers the love that grew between you, He'll understand that some lies are told to protect greater truths. Emily hoped Sophia was right, because if not, if Nathan could never forgive her for the farce she had lived, then she had gained a family and lost her heart forever. And that she wasn't sure she could bear. 3 months had passed since the night of the Hamilton Gala, and Emily still woke up every morning expecting to see Nathan at the breakfast table. But the Blackwood mansion was silent, almost ghostly, without the presence of the man who had given life to those walls. Nathan had left for New York City the morning after the confrontation with Victoria, leaving only a brief letter saying he needed time and space to process everything that had happened. James had delivered the letter personally, with tears in his eyes and an apology that Emily couldn't understand at the time. Now, sitting in the library where she had first met Nathan, Emily understood the elderly butler's pain. James had seen the mansion lose its soul twice, first when Sophia disappeared, then when Nathan left, and this time he knew it might never again be the home full of life and love it had been for a few precious days. Emily had officially established herself as Emily Collins Blackwood, recognized daughter of Michael Blackwood. The legal processes were surprisingly quick, facilitated by the mountain of evidence Sophia had gathered and by Thomas Reynolds' testimony. Victoria was in prison, awaiting trial for homicide, and her reputation had been completely destroyed when the media discovered the story. Michael's inheritance was substantial: properties, investments, artwork, enough to ensure that Emily would never again have to worry about money. But wealth without love seemed hollow, meaningless. She would trade all the fortune for a morning with Nathan, for his smile, for his hands holding hers. "Miss Emily?" Martha's voice pulled her from her melancholic thoughts. The maid was standing at the door of the library, holding a tray with tea. "I thought you might like some tea. It's getting chilly outside." "Thank you, Martha. You can leave it there." Martha placed the tray on the small table next to the armchair where Emily was sitting, but hesitated before leaving. "Ma'am, may I speak freely?" "Of course, Martha. You always can." "Mr. Nathan called early this morning." Emily felt her heart instantly accelerate. "He did? What did he say?" "He asked how you were, if you were eating well, if you needed anything." Martha paused. "He asked if you were happy." Emily closed her eyes, feeling a familiar pain spread through her chest. "And what did you answer?" "I told the truth, Ma'am. That you're doing well physically, but that anyone can see you're heartbroken." Emily smiled sadly. Martha had always been direct, one of the qualities she most appreciated in the woman. "Did he say anything else?" "He said he's coming back to Oakmont next week, that there are company matters he needs to handle personally." Emily felt a mixture of hope and terror. She would see Nathan again, but she didn't know if he wanted to see her or simply needed to take care of business in the city. "Thank you for telling me." "Ma'am," Martha hesitated again, "Mr. Nathan, he's suffering as much as you are. Every time he calls, I can hear it in his voice. He misses you, even if he's too stubborn to admit it." After Martha left, Emily walked to the window that overlooked the back gardens. It was autumn now and the leaves were changing color, creating a golden and red carpet on the ground. She had begun to take care of the abandoned gardens, working with her hands in the soil as a form of therapy. Slowly the space was coming back to life, just as she hoped her heart would do someday. Sophia had left 2 weeks after the confrontation, fulfilling her promise to leave Nathan free to get on with his life, but not before having a final conversation with Emily, a conversation that still echoed in her mind. "You deserve to be loved for who you really are," Sophia had said, "and Nathan deserves the chance to love the real you. But both of you will have to overcome the fear of vulnerability, the fear of trusting again." Emily had asked if Sophia thought Nathan would forgive her, if they could ever rebuild what they had lost. "Your love was real," Sophia had answered. "It may have started with a lie, but it grew based on truth. Nathan just needs to remember that." Now, looking at the garden that was slowly blooming again, Emily wondered if their love would have the same chance to be reborn. The following days passed with agonizing slowness. Emily knew Nathan was back in the city because Thomas had mentioned meeting with him for legal matters, but he hadn't come to the mansion, hadn't tried to contact her directly. It was on Thursday that Emily decided she couldn't passively wait any longer. If Nathan wouldn't come to her, she would go to him. She discovered through Thomas that Nathan was staying at a hotel in downtown Oakmont, avoiding the family mansion. The Plaza Hotel, an elegant establishment where the Blackwood family maintained a permanent suite for business. Emily dressed carefully, a simple but elegant dress in navy blue, her hair loose, discreet makeup. She wanted to look like herself, not an idealized or performative version. If Nathan was going to reject her definitively, at least he would be rejecting the real Emily. The hotel was familiar. She had been there a few times with Nathan during the weeks they lived as husband and wife. The concierge recognized her and greeted her respectfully, informing her that Mr. Blackwood was in the suite, but had asked not to be disturbed. "Please," Emily said, "it's very important." The man hesitated, then nodded and picked up the phone. "Mr. Blackwood, I apologize for disturbing you, but Miss Emily Blackwood is here in the reception and would like to see you." "Yes, sir." "I understand. Yes, I'll tell her." He hung up the phone and looked at Emily with a sympathetic but embarrassed expression. "I'm sorry, miss. Mr. Blackwood asked me to say he's busy and can't receive you at the moment." Emily felt as if she had been slapped. Nathan was there, just meters away from her, but refused to see her. "I understand," she managed to say, keeping her dignity intact. "Thank you." She left the hotel with shaky legs and a broken heart. It was the confirmation she had been trying to avoid. Nathan didn't want anything more to do with her. He had processed everything that happened and decided he couldn't forgive her. She walked through the streets of downtown Oakmont aimlessly, trying to process the finality of the situation. Perhaps it was time to accept that she had lost Nathan forever and try to move on with her life. It was when she was passing by St. Mary's Church, a small historic chapel in the heart of the city, that she saw a familiar figure sitting on one of the benches in front of the building. Nathan. He had his back to her, looking at the facade of the church, and seemed thinner, more tired than she remembered. He was wearing a dark suit, but there was something disheveled about his appearance that was completely different from the meticulously groomed man she had known. Emily hesitated. He had just refused to see her at the hotel. Perhaps she should respect his decision and leave. But something kept her standing there, observing the man she loved lost in his own thoughts. It was then that Nathan turned his head and saw her. For a moment, neither of them moved. They looked at each other across the garden, two broken hearts, separated by meters of distance and months of pain. Then Nathan slowly stood up and walked to where she was. "Emily," he said, and his voice was hoarse, loaded with emotion. "Nathan, I tried to see you at the hotel. I know I apologize for not receiving you. I wasn't ready. And now you are." Nathan ran his hand through his hair, the familiar gesture she had begun to love. "I don't know. Maybe I'll never be completely ready for this conversation." They stood there, drinking in each other's presence after being separated for so long. Emily could see the changes in Nathan's face, new lines of tiredness around his eyes, a tension in his jaw that wasn't there before. The separation had taken its toll on him too. "How are you?" he finally asked. "Surviving," Emily responded honestly. "And you?" "The same." The silence extended between them, loaded with everything that wasn't being said. "Why are you here?" Emily asked, gesturing to the church. "In this specific place?" Nathan looked back at the facade of the church. "Michael used to come here when he was a child. After our family adopted him, he had terrible nightmares about the biological parents he had lost. Our mother would bring him here to light candles for them, so he could properly say goodbye." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. Even there, in that loaded moment between them, Nathan was sharing memories of her father. "I come here whenever I need to think about Michael," Nathan continued. "About the decisions I made, about the things I should have done differently." "Nathan, you can't keep blaming yourself for his death. Victoria killed him because she was obsessed with him. Nothing you could have done would have changed that. Nathan looked at her, and Emily saw a vulnerability in his eyes that made her want to embrace him. But I could have known you sooner. If I had paid more attention when Michael mentioned wanting to find his daughter, if I had helped him instead of thinking it was just a whim. So, you do remember Michael talking about me? Nathan nodded. I remember now. At the time I thought, it was just Michael being Michael. Impulsive, romantic, always dreaming of grand gestures. I didn't take it seriously when he said he had discovered where you were, that he wanted to bring you back to the family. You had no way of knowing. He was in danger. Didn't I? Nathan looked directly into her eyes. Or did I simply not want to see? Maybe I ignored the signs because it was easier than facing the complications that bringing you back might cause. Emily took a step closer. Nathan, you're not responsible for Victoria's actions. You're not responsible for Michael's death. And you're not responsible for me growing up away from the family. But I am responsible for not recognizing you when you arrived at my house. Emily stopped, confused. What do you mean? Nathan smiled sadly. You think the resemblance to Sophia was the only reason I so easily accepted that you were my wife? You think it was a coincidence that I fell in love with you so quickly? Emily's heart began to race. I don't understand. Deep, down somewhere in my subconscious, I knew who you were. Not consciously, but my heart recognized you. Recognized Michael's face in your features, recognized his determination in your personality, recognized his kindness in your soul. Emily felt tears stream down her face. You're saying that... I'm saying I didn't fall in love with a lie, Emily. I fell in love with you. With the brave woman who was able to enter a stranger's life to discover her own identity. With the kind woman who took care of me while I didn't even know I needed care. With the strong woman who risked everything to bring justice for a father she never knew. Emily sobbed, all the emotions she had been repressing for months finally overflowing. Then why did you leave? Why did you reject me at the hotel today? Nathan moved closer, raising his hands to gently hold her face. Because I was scared. Scared that everything I felt was based on a confusion. Scared that you couldn't really love me, knowing I'm the man who failed to protect your father. Scared that when the dust settled, you would realize you deserved someone better. For Nathan, you idiot, Emily said through tears, but her voice carried love, not anger. You think I care about anything other than the fact that you are the kindest, most generous, most loving man I've ever met. You think I care about the past, when all I want is a future with you? Nathan pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Forgive me, he whispered. Forgive me for taking so long to realize. Forgive me for letting fear speak louder than love. Forgive me for letting you suffer when all I wanted was to protect you. There's nothing to forgive, Emily replied. I understand why you needed time. I understand why it was difficult to trust me after everything that happened. Can you forgive me for leaving you alone when you needed me most? Emily smiled through her tears. Only if you promise never to leave me again. I promise, Nathan said, and then he kissed her. It was different from the kisses they had shared when she was Sophia. This kiss was loaded with knowledge, with truth, with complete acceptance. It was Emily kissing Nathan, and Nathan kissing Emily, without lies, without masks, with nothing but pure and honest love. When they separated, Nathan held her hands firmly. Emily Collins Blackwood, he said, as if testing the name. My adoptive niece, Michael's daughter, the woman who saved my heart. And you, Emily responded. Nathan Blackwood, my foster uncle, Michael's adoptive brother, the man who taught me what true love is.